0.2%. Sweden's Ericsson has gained 4.2% in U.S. trading, and Finland's Nokia has risen 3.9%. Dow Jones reported that the Trump administration may push U.S. technology companies to buy the makers of wireless network equipment. The story cited unnamed people familiar with the matter. Sweden's SAEB has advanced 3.9%. Regulators in the bank's home country and in Estonia imposed fines totaling about $110 million for SEB's failure to deter money laundering. Morgan Stanley said the fines were in line with estimates. Germany's Lufthansa has fallen 6.9%. The airline won shareholder approval for a government bailout valued at the equivalent of $10 billion. Terms of the rescue call for the government to buy a 20% stake in Lufthansa at a below-market price. And another German company, Wirecard, has plunged almost 74% after seeking the country's version of bankruptcy protection. The payment processor filed for insolvency after the equivalent of $2.1 billion in cash on its books couldn't be found, Doug.
All right, thanks to Dave Wilson. We've got a rally in shares of Rite Aid. The stock is up 26%. Company reported earnings above estimates, and the drugstore company's revenue, $6 billion, topping estimates as well. Even so, Rite Aid did withdraw its forecast for the fiscal year 21, given a lot of uncertainty. Prescription demand is being hindered, according to the store, by the pandemic because they're seeing a very slow return of patients to doctors' offices and also a decline in surgeries. That is your view on markets. Let's get to Balance of Power with David Weston.
This is Balance of Power.
Everybody in the world has one common enemy, and that's to win the war against this virus.
The first thing you do is listen to the medical professionals.
Those people that lost their pay, we want to see that pay continued.
Where the world of politics meets the world of business.
Our priority is the health and well-being and the lives of the American people.
We want to make sure that we are continuing to support our hospitals.
We've unleashed our most potent weapon of all, the courage of the American people.
Balance of Power with David Weston on Bloomberg Radio.
New doubts about the recovery as U.S. jobless claims remain stubbornly high, and the COVID-19 virus is on the march again, raising new challenges for economies in some of the states that moved first to reopen. From New York, welcome to the second hour of Bloomberg Balance of Power. I'm David Weston. The coronavirus is showing alarming growth in certain states, with record numbers of new cases in Texas and Florida and California, and Houston running out of ICU beds. We welcome now Nikki Fried, Commissioner of Agriculture and Consumer Services for the state of Florida. Commissioner Fried is the only Democrat holding statewide office in Florida. So, Commissioner, thank you so much for being with us. We have to start with what we're all concerned about. How is it going in Florida? It sounds disturbing.
We are concerned. Today, we heard that there was over 5,000 cases that were reported from yesterday's testing. So certainly there is huge concern about the uptick in the cases. And we're seeing it all over the state, from all of our big counties to our smaller counties. And you're seeing a lot of our local governments as well starting to enforce and to put into place mask ordinances. In fact, about a half an hour ago, I called for a statewide ordinance as well. So certainly the numbers are alarming. And I do believe it's because we opened up too fast and opened up different types of business establishments like restaurants and bars, movie theaters, bowling alleys, which really have, the whole point of all those locations is for social interaction. And so without having the proper ordinances and proper, enforcement of those establishments, you're going to see an uptick. And that's what we're seeing here in the state.
What about the statewide approach versus local? As I recall, your governor, a Republican, had been really saying, let's do it area by area because it's different. For example, Miami-Dade is worse than the rest of the state is. Is that still the case? Is there a significant difference among the different counties in the state?
I was critical of the governor when he made that original approach to shut down different areas of the state, because the way our state operates is that people travel, from county to county all of the time. And so if you have somebody who may have been, let's say, in Dade County and goes down to Monroe, which is where the Florida Keys are, and if you haven't done a shutdown in the Keys, somebody going down there for the weekend, either for vacationing or for business, is going to carry the virus with them. So that's why it was always really enforcement of a statewide approach to this, just because so much of our state really is transient. And I still think the same thing has to happen here for dealing with mask ordinances and how we approach it. We saw at record numbers of bars opening during Memorial Day weekend, people on the beaches. And if you travel the state, you're hearing all the time, no matter which county you're in, bars are packed, the beaches are packed, restaurants are not adhering to the reopening standards. And so that's going to be a statewide approach on how we deal with it. But unfortunately, because we don't have one, our local governments are having to step up to the plate and enforce the reopening themselves.
The Republican governor of Texas today said we're going to put a hold on any further opening up given the situation in Texas. Is there an indication that your governor might take a similar path? Is there any indication he may change his position?
You know, our governor here has been steadfast on trying to open up our state, has been trying to minimize the outbreaks and the spikes, has been unfortunately scapegoating certain parts, sectors of our state, including Hispanic migrant workers, and really not giving an accurate full picture of what is happening. So I don't see him yet making any moves backwards. We obviously have here in the state of Florida the RNC coming to Jacksonville at the end of August. And so I think his mission is to make sure that the messaging for reopening our state stays pretty consistent, moving forward steadily. And unfortunately, that puts into jeopardy not only the citizens of our state, but anybody who may be traveling here for the RNC.
You are Commissioner of Agriculture and Consumer Services. Give us a sense of the state of agriculture and how it's being affected in Florida by this pandemic.
You know, we took a significant hit. Agriculture here in the state is typically number 2 economic driver. But during this pandemic and when economic downturns, we turned to be number 1. And so, but unfortunately, what we saw is the food service demand took a major hit. And that's everything from our large-scale purchasers, our restaurants, our schools, Disney, Universal Studios. And with those bulk purchasing plummeting, so many of our crops were left on the fields. And so we had huge losses in our state. And that was estimated about 522 million estimated losses. 165 million in tomatoes, 95 million in watermelon, and the list just goes on and on. So we certainly took a drastic hit, but we were very proactive. We opened up basically an online commodities exchange, Florida Farm to You, which allowed an opportunity for so many of our producers to connect with the consumers directly. And so what I'm calling is a consumer conscious awakening that's happening in our state, where our consumers are realizing the importance of buying local produce. And so you saw more uptake in a lot of the online deliveries from our local farmers, more of the U-Picks, more of the farmers markets, seeing a bulk increase in the purchasing power. But the Florida growers are resilient. We've been faced with a lot of downturns between the USMCA, which was NAFTA, unfair trade practices, 2 hurricane hits, citrus greening here that was decimating our citrus industry. So our agriculture industry is certainly resilient, but we took some heavy hits. But we are working forward and trying to rebuild and make sure that our planting season stays consistent to what it's been in years past.
And finally, that's on the demand side. What about the supply side? What efforts are being made to try to protect the farm workers and, for that matter, people who work in food processing plants?
Sure. The supply side has never diminished. We had a continued overabundance of supplies and food. That's when you saw a lot of our milk being spilled out, a lot of our row crops being plowed under. The supply was always there and always consistent. The only issue that we had was when everybody was hoarding at the very beginning, and it was just a matter of trying to keep up with the supply, with the demand. But unfortunately, that's unfortunate. But we took a lot of precautions with a lot of our ag producers to make sure that our farm workers received PPE, that there were social distancing at the farms. But unfortunately, a lot of these workers are living in impoverished communities. With not as well of a healthcare system. So we certainly didn't see a lot of it uptick at the very beginning, but certainly we're monitoring it now and making sure that when a lot of our migrant workforce comes back into our state, which would be about August, September, that we're putting the parameters in place because they are essential workers. And we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to give them the healthcare that they need, make sure that we're enforcing PPE and social distancing, and making sure that we provide avenues that if they are in fact testing positive, that they are still able to work, to still get the salary.
Thank you so very much. Really appreciate you being with us. That's Nikki Fried. She's Florida Commissioner of Agriculture and Consumer Services. Coming up here, we need a vaccine worse than ever. We talk about the prospects with Dr. Bill Moss of Johns Hopkins. That's coming up next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio.
Reopenings,
Is there a likelihood that we have a sustained recovery?
Requirements.
Lawmakers have passed sweeping legislation.
Returns.
The president signed an executive order.
Bloomberg Daybreak with Karen Moscow and Nathan Hager.
We continue our Bloomberg Radio team coverage.
Everything you need now.
Let's head to Washington now.
Bloomberg Daybreak, weekday mornings at 5 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Right now, Doctors Without Borders medical teams are operating in some of the most remote and dangerous corners of the world. When front yards become front lines, at the crossroads of conflict and epidemic, where there are no hospitals, that's where we operate. Your response is critical to our response in places where few others will go. That's where we operate. Learn more at doctorswithoutborders.org.
If knowledge is power, the Bloomberg Terminal is your power up, connecting you to real-time financial data, market-moving news, powerful analytics, and an influential network of financial decision makers around the world. Share ideas, negotiate trades, and gain the insight you need to make more informed decisions. See how the terminal can take your workflow to the next level at Bloomberg.com/professional.
Tom has been a teacher for over 40 years. One day, I think one of the students had asked the question and he didn't remember the answer. And I also noticed that he was letting his class out earlier than they were supposed to let out. I was really starting to worry.
Levi and I talked about how it would change our lives, but he was there beside me.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
How long? How much?
Listen. That's a dream. Everyone has them, jingling away in the back of our minds. And most of the time, that's where dreams stay. So easy to ignore. Anything can drown them out, and everything does. But at Honda, we listen to our dreams. We get right up close. And on really good days, they become reality. From 2022, Honda's mainstream cars will only be hybrid or electric. Honda, the power of dreams.
At Halfords, we're here to get you where you want to be. We fit car tyres for over 500,000 customers every year. We could fit yours at one of over 350 garages, or even on your driveway with our mobile experts, which means you can safely hit the road again and surprise that special someone.
Happy birthday!
From tyre fittings to MOTs, there really is no job too big or too small. Halfords, for life's journeys.
At Argos, our sale is on and so much more. Go online to shop our range of amazing deals, including tech, toys and home. And style up your home with up to half price on selected home and furniture. Visit our website to shop our full range of deals. With Argos, you're good to go. Subject to availability, conditions apply, sale ends 14th of July.
Tuesdays at KFC gonna get you like, wow, pow, chow, kapow, get down right now. If you know how, then take a bow. Because this deal's gonna raise a brow. Get 9 pieces of original recipe chicken for an eye-popping $5.99. What the... Every Tuesday at KFC. Participating restaurants ends 18th of August 2020. Tuesdays only, subject to availability, not available online.
This is a message from the government about the next stage of controlling coronavirus with NHS Test and Trace. To protect your friends and family, testing and tracing must become a new way of life. If you have symptoms, you need to get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we will contact you to trace people who you might have infected. From now on, if you're told you've been exposed to an infected person, you must self-isolate for 14 days. Play your part and do the right thing so we can safely return to a more normal life. Go to nhs.uk or call 119. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
It could be a first-timer or a long-timer or a once-in-a-whiler. It could be a little or a lot. It could be the ticket under your fridge magnet. It could be someone with your first name and last and middle. It could be you. This Saturday's £15 million lotto jackpot must be won, or thousands of you will win a share of the jackpot. Play online or on the app. Lotto from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
With the shift to remote working, video conferencing has become the new normal to keep your business running. But is it reliable and secure? Cisco WebEx is committed to the highest security standards and already trusted by both small businesses and many of the world's largest organizations. Call, message and meet securely with Cisco WebEx. Sign up at cisco.uk/work-from-home. When secure remote work is critical, WebEx is essential.
From all of us at Thames Water, thank you for supporting our key workers. As the weather warms up, demand for our water is growing, so we need your help more than ever. From taking shorter showers to turning off your sprinklers, you can make every drop count, inside and outside your home, to keep taps flowing in your community. Just don't forget to keep washing your hands regularly in line with government advice. Be an H2O hero. Find out how at thameswater.co.uk/watersmart.
And breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
17 past the hour. Let's get you caught up on market action. We're seeing stocks move to the upside today, but the gains are kind of being held in check by the number of COVID-19 cases that have been reported, particularly in the state of Texas. We do have bank stocks rallying. This follows a rollback on certain regulations in the Volcker rule. Banks will now be allowed to more easily invest in things like venture capital, some similar funds, and at the same time, banks will be permitted to avoid setting aside cash for certain derivative trades. The S&P 500 Financials Index is up just about 1.8% right now, and for the S&P overall, a gain of more than 0.2%. Dow Industrial Average right now ahead by about 0.3%, and we're seeing a similar move higher for the NASDAQ Composite. The number of American workers filing for first-time jobless claims higher than forecast for a second straight week. Claims totaled 1.48 million. We also had a read on first quarter GDP. Not surprising, a contraction by 5%. Got a 10-year Treasury now yielding 66 basis points. A stronger dollar with the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index pushing up by about 0.2%. Crude oil better by 2.6% right now. WTI holding at $39 a barrel. Here we go again. Shares in GNC Holdings rallying by more than 25%, just one day after the company filed for bankruptcy protection. Unlikely or likely a reminder of the situation that took place with Hertz Global Holdings. That's a view on markets. Let's get back to Balance of Power and David Weston.
Thank you so very much to Doug Krisner. The surge in coronavirus cases in many states shows us once again that we need a vaccine before we put this disease behind us for good. We welcome now Dr. Bill Moss. He's Executive Director of the International Vaccine Access Center at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, a school that receives support from Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. So, Dr. Moss, thank you so much for being with us. Give us an update from your point of view on where we are on a vaccine.
Yes. We have over 120 different vaccine candidates in development. What's really important is that a number of these vaccines, more than 10, have moved into our, what we call a kind of late-stage clinical trials, phase 2, phase 3 clinical trials. And these are moving forward very quickly, much more quickly than we've ever seen vaccine candidates moving forward. But that doesn't mean that going to have a safe and effective vaccine. We still have to wait for the results of these phase 3 large clinical trials to be sure the vaccine is safe and effective. So I, along with many other people, feel that it's probably going to be in early 2021 when we may have a vaccine that's available for use.
We had a guest on, an expert, who said that basically all of these various vaccines are taking the same fundamental approach, that is, trying to attack the ability of the virus to attach itself to cells, rather than trying to kill the virus itself, something the Chinese are doing. Is that true? Is there a common approach being taken here, and is there a weakness in the approach by having only one way in?
Yes, so there are a number of different vaccine types, but you're right that the vast majority of vaccines are trying to target this spike protein. That's the protein that sticks out from the virus and allows the virus to attach to cells, and those types of vaccines induce what we call neutralizing antibodies. That is, antibodies produced by the body that will neutralize the virus and prevent that virus from entering cells. This is a very common approach for many of our widely used vaccines against childhood diseases like measles, mumps, and rubella. So this is a really important strategy. And we have clues that this strategy is going to work from studies that are ongoing using convalescent plasma. That is plasma that has antibodies from patients who've recovered from the disease, and then that's given to patients who've been infected or very sick with COVID-19, and there's some preliminary evidence that that's effective. So I think this is the right strategy to go, to induce those antibodies against that spike protein.
You say that there's, I think you said 120 different candidates. 10 of them are getting into late-stage testing, field testing. As a practical matter, will there be one clear winner, or is it possible we will have more than one vaccine at the end of the day?
Yes, we in fact want multiple vaccines at the end of the day, and there are a number of reasons for that. And as we said, there are a number of different types of vaccines. There are vaccines that are using RNA that induce the cells of the body to produce this spike protein. There are vaccines that use what we call vectors, other viruses, to get this DNA into cells. And there are vaccines that either kill or attenuate the actual virus. So there are multiple different ways to do this, and we want multiple different vaccines. We want to be able to scale up production of vaccines so that we can get vaccines to all the people who need it. And different types of vaccines may work differently in different types of people. One priority group will be healthcare workers, frontline healthcare workers. We want them to be protected. But we also want elderly people who are very vulnerable, or people with other diseases. And it may take different types of vaccines to induce the best immune response in these different populations.
You mentioned the key issue of scaling up in success, assuming we find some success. Is there a difference in these different types of approaches to vaccines to how difficult it is to manufacture them?
Yes, there are vast differences in the ability to manufacture and then package and distribute the vaccines. So just to give you an example, the RNA vaccines that induce the cells to produce the protein for which the immune response develops. Those are pretty easy to scale up manufacturing, but those vaccines are very sensitive to high temperature, so they have to be kept very cold. So the manufacturing process may be easier than other vaccines, but the actual storage and delivery may be more complex with those.
Well, I must say, I think we're all learning more about epidemiology and vaccinology than we ever thought we would. But thank goodness we have people like you. That is Dr. Bill Moss of the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, which receives support from Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. Meantime, coming up here, the move toward transparency in what we pay for health care. We're joined by Cynthia Fisher of PatientRightsAdvocate.org, someone who is an advocate for clear transparency in what we're paying for. That's next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. U.S. stocks are modestly higher after regulators approved an overhaul of the Volcker rule that will free up capital for banks. Shares of retailer GNC jumped over 35% today after its recent bankruptcy filing. But investors still remain concerned over the reports of new coronavirus cases in several states. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has halted his phased reopening of the state's economy due to a surge in COVID cases and hospitalizations. LeBron James has raised $100 million to launch a new media venture called Spring Hill Company. The company will make and distribute all kinds of content that will give a voice to creators and consumers who've been pandered to, ignored, or underserved. On Wall Street, the Dow is up 35 points, Nasdaq climbing 19, S&P 500 up 3. Donna Wilson, Bloomberg Radio.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
With COVID-19, so much is unknown.
Is this the worst you've seen?
But we are committed to getting you every piece of information we can as soon as we can.
Tell us about this first big win you have. What is it, 24 million N95 masks?
Fewer unknowns.
Who's winning here? Where is the pressure right now?
That's our goal.
What worries you the most? The time it's going to take for a vaccine?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Listen, that's a dream. Everyone has them, jingling away in the back of our minds. And most of the time, that's where dreams stay. So easy to ignore. Anything can drown them out, and everything does. But at Honda, we listen to our dreams. We get right up close. And on really good days, they become reality. From 2022, Honda's mainstream cars will only be hybrid or electric. Honda, the power of dreams.
At Halfords, we're here to get you where you want to be. Why not book an MOT to get you safely back on the road? With over 600,000 carried out every year at 350 garages, you can always count on our experts. And get back to visiting those you've missed the most.
Hi, Mum.
From a safe distance, of course. From MOTs to battery replacements and tyre fittings, there's no job too big or too small. Halfords, for life's journeys.
There's a reason flash storage is called flash storage and not electronic non-volatile computer memory storage. From quick and efficient data retrieval to instant scalability, everything about IBM flash storage is fast. It's also cloud-ready and surprisingly affordable, with a recommended monthly price of £310 for 24 terabytes of all flash. Order by the 30th of June and pay nothing for 90 days. Find out more at ibm.biz/flash offer.
You always say the best thing you ever did was join up. I bet you don't get the same experiences in Civvy Street. Remember those incredible family adventures? And that feeling of being part of something special. We'd love to have you back. Go on. Feel the pride again. Search RAF Rejoiners.
It could be a first-timer or a long-timer or a once-in-a-whiler. It could be a little or a lot. It could be the ticket under your fridge magnet. It could be someone with your first name and last and middle. It could be you. This Saturday's £15 million lotto jackpot must be won, or thousands of you will win a share of the jackpot. Play online or on the app. Lotto from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Get your cook on with Asda. With rollbacks on Hellman's Real Mayonnaise, 705 grams was £2.75, now £2. And a 6-pack of Warburton Sandwich Thins was £1, now 75p. Wham bam, add your lunchtime ham. Find thousands of rollbacks across our stores. Asda. Selected stores and lines subject to availability. Offers end 1st of July.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
This is Mike Golick from ESPN's Golick and Wingo. Every morning, Trey Wingo, my son, and I sit down to discuss all the news, drama, and highlights spinning the sports world that day. And with TuneIn, you can hear us whenever and wherever you go. Just search Golick and Wingo to start listening today.
Who says only the experts get to do the talking? On the Scuttle Puck NHL Hockey Podcast, irreverent outsiders Mike Bond and Dale Horde give their untrained opinions on all things hockey from the fans' perspective.
I don't know how you get those
guys out of there. And Crosby, as great as he's been, it's just such a different era, so it's tough with the... Like he didn't have the crazy number of points that Orr, Lemieux, and Gretzky did. Like they just...
Search Scuttle Puck on TuneIn to listen. Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Balance of Power with David Weston.
Coming up on Balance of Power, the government and patient rights advocates take a step toward price transparency. Cynthia Fisher is here on the latest court ruling. But first, let's get a market check with Charlie Pellet.
I'll take it here, David. Doug Krisner in the Bloomberg Newsroom. We're looking at first news on COVID-19 from the state of Texas. Governor Greg Abbott halting a phased reopening of the Texas economy, given some mounting criticism that his swift relaxation of lockdowns gave rise to a surge in not only the number of COVID-19 cases, but hospitalizations as well. And moments ago from the Bloomberg terminal, New Jersey has reviewed cases of COVID-19, and the state is saying nearly 2,000 more probable virus deaths occurred. We're seeing a rally in bank stocks today, given a rollback in certain regulations in the Volcker rule. Banks will now be allowed to more easily make large investments into venture capital and similar funds, and banks will also be allowed to avoid setting aside cash for certain derivative trades. We have the S&P Financials Index right now up 1.5%. The S&P 500 better by 0.1%. Similar gain for the Dow Industrial Average, and the NASDAQ Composite pushing higher by about 0.2%. Number of American workers filing for first-time jobless claims more than forecast in the last week. 1.48 million continuing claims, down though by more than forecast to 19.5 million. The American economy contracted by 5% in the first quarter. However, the outlook for the current quarter is much, much worse, maybe a record drop of 45%. That would be based on data compiled by the Fed Bank of Atlanta. Right now, 10-year Treasury yielding 66 basis points. That's the Look at Markets. I'm Doug Krisner. David?
Of course you're Doug Krisner. I apologize for being confused, Doug. Transparency in healthcare pricing has long been a goal of patient rights advocates, and it's something that the HHS is preparing to require the first of next year. But the American Hospital Association sued to stop the new requirement, and the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia has now ruled on the suit. To take us through what the court said, we welcome now Cynthia Fisher, founder of PatientRightsAdvocate.org. Cynthia, welcome back. Always good to have you on Bloomberg. So give us a sense, what did the District Court say?
Good. Thank you for having me today. It's a pleasure to be here. Well, it's been a momentous week for American patients. We had a huge victory in the courts, where the court ruled in favor of patients actually having health care price transparency as early as January 1st of next year. Not only is it a win for patients, but it's a major win for all Americans, because when we can know prices in advance of care and shop, we'll be able to shop for the best quality of care at the lowest possible price. And patients know once they're in control of these choices and benefit from competition, this will overall greatly reduce the cost of both care and coverage.
This is something that President Trump and Secretary Azar, the Secretary of the HHS, Health and Human Services, have been really advocating for some time. Congress has also talked about doing it. Give us a sense of the basis on which it was challenged by the hospitals. It sounds like they challenged it on a First Amendment ground rather than the authority of HHS to do this.
Yes, actually, the Hospital Lobbying Association and a few hospitals weighed in to sue to use the First Amendment. And what they wanted to do is claim that they could keep their gag orders, preventing doctors from knowing prices, and keep their gag orders between insurance companies and hospitals having hidden, secret negotiated rates as the right of their freedom of speech and First Amendment. Well, the court hands down ruled in favor of consumers being informed, and instead put that argument to rest, saying that consumers knowing prices before we get care allows for competition. And so all Americans won in this lawsuit. This is huge. And we have amazing momentum.
Well, it's huge. It is a district court, though. It's not the Court of Appeals. There's another step to take even before you get to the Supreme Court. And the hospitals, I think, have said they're going to appeal, haven't they? Is there some concern that they might get a stay of the new order before it goes into effect the 1st of January so that this lingers for a while?
Actually, you are absolutely right, David. The Hospital Lobbying Association did appeal this decision shortly after it was ruled, and it will go to the appellate court. They asked for expeditious review, and importantly, there's positive momentum in getting not only expeditious review by the court, but importantly, the Senate has positive momentum to actually put these rules, codify them, pass them into legislation in this next COVID stimulus. And this is an issue where 90% of all Americans agree. We're unified that we want to know prices before we get health care. So when 90% of all Americans agree on price transparency, that's bipartisan. And it's really critical that in this next COVID stimulus that we protect patients, employers, taxpayers by insisting that the healthcare price transparency rules are put into law in this next package. That would ensure that any further lawsuits would be moot, and we would be able to see prices as early as January.
So, Cynthia, you're an advocate, but you're also a student of this whole area of healthcare costs. We have something like 18% going toward 20% of GDP devoted to healthcare in this country. There's long been a quest to try to bend that curve, to try to have that flatten out and come back down again. Give us your best sense of, in success in having this transparency, how much of that cost could be taken out of the system?
Well, we know already from actual evidence of physicians and surgical centers that have left the system and gone to price transparent models and have contracted with self-insured employers, that those employers that are looking at the low cash prices, when they directly contract and know the prices before care, they're saving anywhere between 30 to 50% in their annual healthcare costs for their employees and their companies. This is huge. Can you imagine if we could take that 18% and cut it nearly in half? That would put us on par with other developed nations that actually are at nearly half of what we are in their spend in gross domestic product on health care.
Well, that sounds wonderful, but in my experience, there's no such thing as a free lunch. It has to come out of somewhere. Where's all that money coming from? In fact, if you do get the savings, are we giving up something in the quality of our care or our selection, our ability to select the care we want?
Well, actually, in every other industry where we have a competitive, functional marketplace, every other facet of our lives, American consumers know that price transparency actually pulls in quality differentiation. So when we can see prices and we have a functional marketplace, it not only drives down the cost of care, but it improves quality. And we've seen this in technology. We've seen it in groceries. We've seen it in retail. Airlines are a great example. And in fact, when the airline industry became price transparent back since 1978, prices in real dollars have been cut in half before we couldn't see prices. So not only that, planes were safer and quality is better. So this same thing can apply to healthcare, and it's an exciting time because this court ruling shows common sense. People want price transparency, and this is a time where its moment has come. And Senator Braun is leading the charge, and I think stay tuned, David, because there's a lot of momentum in the Senate. Senator Tom Carper, Senator Braun, Senator Portman, Senator Young, and Senator Grassley, who is chairman of the Finance Committee. There's a tremendous amount of support for patients being able to see prices, and we know purchase prices cut costs.
Okay,
and improve quality.
Cynthia, I can sure hear the excitement in your voice. You don't have to tell me you're excited. I can sure tell it. So congratulations on this major victory in the courts, and good luck as you go forward. If you can save us some money on healthcare, I think everybody will be in favor of it, provided we don't give up something in the quality. That is Cynthia Fisher of patientrightsadvocate.org. We turn now to the subject of race in America and the role of professional sports in bridging our divide. LeBron James, one of the greatest players in NBA history, gave a wide-ranging interview to Bloomberg Businessweek covering topics like Black Lives Matter, voter suppression, and the NBA restarting its season.
I think success looks like educating the people that's on the grounds in these cities that we're tackling. We've had voter suppression for so long. People not understanding how they can vote, where they can vote, if their vote really counts. In the black community, you always hear go out and vote, but what you don't understand is who am I voting for? Where can I vote? How many people am I voting for? What does these votes mean? What do they stand for? So the education side is what we're most proud about. That is success for us, where we're actually getting these communities out to vote, but they're even more educated on who they're voting for, how they can vote, where they can vote. They have that power. There's a lot of people that believe that they can't vote because they've had previous convictions with the law or they've been to jail and they've been told that they cannot vote, that their vote does not get submitted and things of that nature, which is untrue in a lot of states that we're tackling. So to educate and to make aware of the people that's on the ground, that has a lot to do with the future of our country. That is one of the success that we can have, and we'll see what happens in November.
And Maverick, I do wonder, to speak to this moment where we are, given that you were positioned to do this via Spring Hill, what are the conversations that are incoming to you, whether it's from studios, whether it's from CEOs of companies? Are your calls getting returned more? Or is there more interest in what you're doing, given that the world does seem to be moving in this moment?
Yeah. And you keep calling it a moment. Hopefully it's not just a moment, right? I don't want to call it a moment. This is what's needed. This is actually more like what this country should be and what this world should be. So it's not a moment. It doesn't feel at all like a moment to me. As I said, I've been black my whole life, right? So and pushing to empower all people and specifically black people my whole life. And our company, as I said, if you look at what we made long before this time, we made Self-Made on Netflix, right? We made Shut Up and Dribble on Showtime. So we've always been about empowering people who feel like us and come from the communities that we come from and want to believe in our mission. And the content we've created, who we've created that content with, has always been about that. And I think for us as a company, people already understood and felt and knew and could feel the essence of what we're doing. It's obviously a bit magnified now. So the conversations that are internally with all of us and the people who work at our company are pretty much the same. We're getting some external calls that, hey, if you guys have ideas that want to help us, sure. And me personally, I am getting a lot of calls from people, other CEOs. I happen to serve on the board of Live Nation, so I'm spending a lot of time with them.
That was the one and only LeBron James, together with his business partner, Maverick Carter. And you can catch the full interview right here at the top of the hour on Bloomberg Businessweek. And you can also catch it on YouTube by searching Bloomberg Global New. And now, for a market check, we turn to Doug Krisner.
Thank you, David. Let's begin with some of the news on COVID-19. In Texas, Governor Greg Abbott has halted the phased reopening of his state's economy. The governor's been criticized for his swift relaxation of those lockdowns, given a rise in the number of cases and hospitalizations as well. And then in New Jersey, the state has reviewed cases of the disease and now has classified 1,854 more deaths as probably linked to the novel coronavirus. Right now, the major averages are trading higher, but we are off the best levels of the day. The Dow is up about 0.3%. Similar gain for the S&P 500. NASDAQ Composite pushing up by just about 0.4%. A lot of strength today in energy shares, tracking the price of crude oil higher. WTI right now, $38.90 with a gain of more than 2.3%. And bank stocks are rallying, given a rollback on certain regulations within the Volcker rule. Banks will now be allowed to more easily invest in venture capital and similar funds. And banks will also be allowed to avoid setting aside cash for certain derivatives trading. We have shares in Macy's down about 5%. The company is going to cut about 3,900 corporate and management jobs. The restructuring is expected to save Macy's about $365 million this fiscal year, then about $630 million a year going forward. We have the dollar gaining ground against the majors, with the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index picking up about 0.2%, and the yield on the 10-year Treasury now is at 67 basis points. In terms of eco data, the number of first-time jobless claims, 1.48 million last week, higher than forecast for a second straight week. Meantime, GDP in the U.S. for the first quarter contracting by 5%. That was pretty much in line with estimates. That is your view on markets. I'm Doug Krisner in New York. David?
Thank you so much to Doug Krisner. Brown University raised a furor when it abruptly canceled 11 of its 38 varsity sports, and a group of the athletes who were affected have now retained a legal counsel to pursue possible remedies. Welcome now, Jeffrey Kessler. He's co-executive chairman of Winston & Strawn. Mr. Kessler represents a group of Brown athletes. So welcome. It's great to have you with us, Mr. Kessler. Give us a sense of what you understand about what happened at Brown.
So it's important to understand that this is not the usual case where a university cancels teams because it's financially in trouble, it doesn't have the money to support the teams, it engages in a big study. None of that happened here, and Brown has said that this has nothing to do with money. This also has nothing to do with the COVID epidemic. This is not about whether the teams could come back or what's happening on the campus or anything else. So that would be the normal things you would think. What happened here is that Brown started a secret study over a year ago, which it hid from the students and the parents and the coaches, to decide to eliminate some of its teams because they thought it would help Brown to be more competitive. That's what they stated now. And the reason they say they hid this from everyone is because they knew if the athletes had information about this, they might seek to transfer to play varsity sports at another school, or incoming freshmen might accept a different school's invitation rather than come to Brown when they wanted to play in these sports. Brown kept all that in the dark, waited until the end of May, and on 1 hour's notice told all these varsity athletes that, sorry, no varsity teams for you. Yeah. So we believe this is outrageous. It is a classic mistreatment of the student athletes for the interest of the university and not having them make fair choices. And we've been retained to assert legal claims, which we will do if the teams are not reinstated.
So outrageous is not necessarily the grounds of a lawsuit. As I understand it, you've written a letter to the leadership of Brown, and you haven't said you're filing a lawsuit, but you sort of outlined some possible grounds of suing. And is one of them very specifically what you just said, which is they specifically didn't tell kids so they wouldn't be able to make plans, alternative plans?
Yes, this is fraud. So the law of Rhode Island, like the law of almost all the 50 states, makes it very clear that when you have a relationship with someone and you make representations about things that you know they're relying upon, you can't deliberately conceal what lawyers call material facts, things that would affect your decisions and lives. What happened here is Brown did that deliberately. And when you do that deliberately, you've not only committed a fraud, you subject yourself not only to damages, but to punitive damages. The athletes, by the way, these students, don't want damages. They want their teams. So this is not, they're not anxious to make this a big legal dispute. What they hope is that Brown, who says they're committed to the welfare of their athletes, will give this another look and decide, you know what, this wasn't right, this wasn't proper, it's not about their money, we have plenty of money to fund the teams, let's keep these varsity sports intact.
How many athletes are we talking about? Do you know? I mean, because as I read it, it didn't look like some of these teams were teams that had a lot of participants. This is not like the football team. It's not like the basketball team, baseball team.
No, it is teams like squash and golf and skiing and equestrian and other teams that are important to these athletes, obviously, but they're not big numbers. But in total, more than 100 students are still affected. And it was a bigger number, but they have already backed down from eliminating the cross-country and men's track teams because they actually realized that they were creating diversity issues for the school by doing that. So they already backed down on 2 of the teams, but they're still fighting for these other 8 teams on this issue. I also would note that these are teams that not only provide enriching experiences for the athletes, but are deeply involved in the Providence community. One of them works with a middle school and has been praised by that middle school, the squash team, for providing programs and leadership and inspiration to the kids in what is a poor school district, a minority school district, and has been reaching out. That will be totally eliminated, obviously, if the team is eliminated. Another one, the golf team, has been a leader in promoting golf for young girls, which is an important issue because given our sexism in society, there have not been many organizations doing that. And so there's lots of impacts here. It's just so thoughtless, but I'm a lawyer, it's illegal. And that's the problem.
So it may be a bad decision for some of the reasons you described, but when you come to fraud, if Brown came back and said, okay, you know what, you're right, we shouldn't have misled people, we should have let them know what was going on. So what we're going to do now is we're going to keep those 11 sports going for 4 years, which is the amount of time you would be able to play, and then we're going to cancel them. Does that take away your claim?
That would take away a claim for fraud, right? Then what we would expect to happen is that they would have an open process in which athletes can participate, in which their families can participate, in which alumni can participate, and they can make a sound decision for the university. We'd be perfectly happy with that resolution.
But there are all sorts of decisions the university makes, like to cancel a given course or something like that. Do you think that that should be applied to all of the decisions that a university makes in cutting back on a curriculum, changing its curriculum?
I think when it's something you rely upon, so for example, many of these athletes were recruited athletes. They were specifically approached by the coaches and induced to come to the school for being on that varsity team. In that situation, I don't think you could pull the rug out without any notice in terms of that. Okay, whether, what Brown should do with respect to it overall, I guess if it eliminated, for example, the history department, they probably would want to give some notice to that before students who came in expecting to be history majors, found that out.
Let's broaden this out a bit because there are a lot of legal issues surrounding collegiate sports these days. And by the way, a lot of teams are getting canceled because of the pandemic and because of the economic concerns. Where are we right now on paying student athletes? The NCAA has changed their rules prospectively, right, about at least getting some money to the athletes?
So we won a lawsuit, my firm and another firm, against the NCAA, holding their restrictions to be antitrust violations. And the relief we got is that starting probably in 2021, we have to wait for all appeals to be finished, and now still trying to do a further appeal, possibly to the Supreme Court. They will be able to award unlimited educational benefits to the athletes. And what that means, for example, is they'll be able to let them study abroad, have computers and other equipment that they need for their classes, get unlimited tutoring, get postgraduate scholarships in any area that they wish to pursue, have internships that support their educational development. This isn't full compensation, which I think is a goal that we'd ultimately like to see the schools free to do that, but it is a big step in that direction. And once the appeals are finished, we'll see that starting to happen. For those schools, by the way, who have the means to do so. All we ask is to free the schools to do what they feel is the right thing to do and eliminate the restrictions. If the school doesn't
just saying they
have
can't
the
agree not to
resources
pay.
to do it, they won't do it.
Right. You're just saying they can't all get together and agree on the same rules. They have to compete potentially with one another on what they offer the athletes, right?
Right. No one pretends that Lehigh has the same resources for its football team as the University of Alabama does. The University of Alabama makes $150 million from its football team. It could provide more benefits for its athletes, and it should be permitted to do so if it wants to.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And what about sponsorship money? Is that on the table?
Well, that's not in my lawsuit, but that's a different issue going forward. So California passed a law, and now Florida's joined, which requires schools in their states to allow their athletes to individually earn money from sponsors or do social media or do other things to get the benefit that other students could do.
Fascinating. Thank you so much. It's really great to have you with you on the area of compensating student athletes. That's Jeffrey Kessler of Winston & Strawn. That does it for Balance of Power for today. I'm David Weston, and this is Bloomberg.
This pandemic is about more than market.
At Honda, we've never looked to other car companies for inspiration. No, it's not a matter of an inflated ego. We just prefer listening to what people really need. For example, the new Honda Jazz Hybrid doesn't have the expected 6 airbags. It has 10, including one that prevents the driver and passenger from colliding with each other. And because we also listen to our conscience, all our safety features come as standard. No charge. Honda, the power of dreams.
At Tesco, we've price-matched Aldi on hundreds of products, like bananas, peppers, chicken breasts, tomatoes, Warburton's bread, strawberries, even avocados. That's Tesco products at Aldi prices. Because now more than ever, every little helps. Tesco. Prices checked on comparable products from GBLD stores and online twice weekly. Price most often found matched excluding promotions. Selected Tesco stores excluding Express and all Northern Ireland stores. Products and their availability vary weekly and by store. Details at tesco.com/Aldi price match.
Buckle up, race fans.
NASCAR is back in the driver's seat.
And you can cut straight to the action here.
With the Performance Racing Network on TuneIn, you can hear PRN's live coverage of some of this year's top events.
As NASCAR's top drivers, Kevin Harvick,
Clint Boyer, and more get back on the track.
Search Performance Racing Network to listen and see upcoming races.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
How do you keep track of all your favorite stations and podcasts? Easy. You add them to your favorites list. Just find the audio you want to bookmark and tap the heart icon. Then, whenever you want to browse your favorites, you'll find everything under the Favorites tab.
Are you ready for the realist first-hand take of what's happening in the NBA? On their podcast, All the Smoke, former NBA players Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson bring their fiery intensity to the mic, dishing on the latest news and drama from on and off the court without boundaries.
Half man, half amazing. My friend, our brother, Vince Carter, man. Welcome to the show.
Yo, what's up, man?
What's up, my brother?
Man,
Search All the Smoke on TuneIn to listen.
Capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Business Week. Insight from the reporters and editors who bring you America's most trusted business magazine. Plus, global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Messer and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
Live from our Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio in our New York headquarters and live from my home in New Jersey, streaming on YouTube. It is Thursday, June 25th, 2020. You're there.
I'm here. Had to be here. Couldn't help it.
There's a big interview I heard about, so maybe we'll hear a little bit about it over the next 4 hours.
We might hear a little bit about it. You might have heard of him, LeBron James. I sat down with him earlier this week for the second time. It's this week's Business Week cover story.
All right, looking forward to that big time. We got to talk a little bit about the stock market because we are seeing it up today, Jason. Some new rules when it comes to banks. That's given them a boost, but we still had mixed economic data, and we are still seeing some setbacks when it comes to the virus. So we've got a lot to cover.
It's a complicated trade, it feels like. So let's get some of the numbers from Charlie Pellet. Hey, Charlie.
Charlie's not here today, Jason. I am, but I'll take care of it. You guys said
I saw Charlie earlier, and I'm just totally thrown off.
It's remarkable. The
and
guy
it's
has
so
a
great
day
to
off
hear
and he
your
comes
voice,
into the
Doug.
office. Thank you.
He's crazy, Doug.
Yeah, it's nuts.
So glad
but you set up today's session perfectly. I mean, that's the tension that's playing out in markets right now. In terms of COVID-19, we've got the situation in Texas where the governor has halted the phase reopening of the economy. He's been criticized for the way he kind of relaxed lockdowns, maybe a little too swiftly, and now they've got a spike in cases and, more importantly, in the level of hospitalizations, particularly in Houston, where the ICU level now is maxed out. And then in New Jersey, the governor reviewed the number of cases of COVID-19, and now the state has classified 1,854 more deaths as probably linked to the virus. You're absolutely right, Carol. In terms of the banks, there has been a rollback on certain regulations within the Volcker rule. And if you look at the S&P Financials Index right now, a gain of 1.5%. Overall, the market is positive, barely, with the Dow holding on to a gain about 0.1%. Similar move for the Nasdaq or the S&P 500. Nasdaq Composite is up about 0.2%. The number of American workers seeking jobless benefits higher than forecast for a second straight week. GDP in Q1 here in the States down 5%. That was right in line with estimates. 10-year Treasury is at 67 basis points. That's the Bloomberg Business Flash. Back to you guys.
All right, Doug, thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Well, let's set the Business Week agenda. And this is an exciting moment, Carol, because guess who I'm in the studio with?
Michael McKee.
It's Michael McKee, our international economics and policy correspondent. Just a couple bros, social distancing in our Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio here. Dave Wilson's also with us. He's on the access line from New Jersey. Dave, before we get to Mike, set the tone for the trade. We heard the numbers from Doug, but what is up with this trade?
Yeah, I mean, you've got a market that's kind of bouncing around a bit here, no question. S&P 500 now up 0.1%. You run through the main industry groups, certainly the financial stocks that you were talking about stand out in terms of what's higher. And it's not just the sort of easing of rules that we've already had. I mean, after the close of trading, we're going to be hearing from the Federal Reserve with results of their annual stress tests. And usually it's a two-part process. This time around, they're changing things up and giving you all the results in one shot. So, we'll start to see a sense of how the banks look in the regulator's eyes. Now, on the other hand, you got utility stocks as the worst performers on the day by a pretty substantial margin. Real estate stocks down as well. I mean, it's the interest-sensitive areas of the market that are hurting here. So, and of course, with real estate, you have to think about, all these stores and offices, what happens to them as a result of the coronavirus. That's certainly part of the mix here. So, some positive earnings as well from the likes of Accenture and Darden Restaurants. They're two of the day's best performers in the S&P 500.
Got to get to the day's economic news because it was a mixed bag. Mike McKee, come on in on it. I heard you breaking it down on surveillance this morning. So what do we need to know?
I don't think it was really so mixed. I think it was genuinely pretty bad. Yes, we had a decline in initial jobless claims and continuing claims, but those declines were so small that statistically it's hard to make much out of them. And we did see more than expected in initial jobless claims at 1,480,000. And we're 14 weeks into it. So you got to wonder, why are we still seeing numbers that high? Are that many people still losing jobs? Some people suggest there's fraud in the system. States have backlogs trying to process things. Others say, people have been trying for a long time to get claims in and just can't work the computers. So we really don't know, but it is still a very high number. And the same is true with continuing claims. 19 million, all right, we're under 20 million. But when you add in the freelancers and gig workers who get the pandemic assistance that was put into the CARES Act, and the other people who are receiving benefits, you're up to 30 million Americans who are getting some form of unemployment benefits.
I just have to say, because somebody tweeted when I put out the jobless claims numbers this morning, they're like, but wait a minute, continuing claims are below 20 million. It's still not a great number.
No, and you wonder how you're going to get all those people back to work.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and it feels like we are seeing a trend of people saying they're increasingly worried both on the employer and employee side that some of those jobs aren't going to come back. So looking ahead, a week from now, we're going to get that monthly jobs report. Will that clarify, or will it potentially muddy the picture, Mike?
It might muddy the picture because for two reasons. One, the establishment survey, the number of jobs created may go up. Remember, this is the week that includes the 12th of the month, the payroll 12th of the month. So that was in early May when things were looking better. And we had a lot of run of data then that people said, hey, we're coming out of this. We bottomed. And now look at the virus reports from around the nation. And then the Labor Department has been working on how to get the unemployment numbers right because there's been a classification problem. If they get them right, then we could see the unemployment rate rise again. So you might see an increase in jobs, but also an increase in unemployment, which would be kind of hard to square.
I said mixed because durable goods orders were up almost 16%. Isn't that a little bit of optimism?
Maybe a little bit in the sense that they were up. They were, as you say, almost up 16%, but they'd fallen 18% the month before. So we're still way down. $174 billion worth of durable goods orders. In February, it was $246 billion. So we're still way below. Now, if people do come back to work, there are some orders to fill, but it's still not a whole lot to keep the economy going.
All right, Dave Wilson, give us a very quick tease for your chart of the day.
The word of the day, Jason, is mediocrity. And it's being applied to Warren Buffett.
That's a shocker, man. I'm sticking around for that chart.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Dave Wilson, you'll be back with us at 3:30 for that chart, and right after the close for your stock of the day. Our thanks to you and to Michael McKee here in the Bureau. Don't go, international economics and policy correspondent for Bloomberg here in our Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio.
Go play. So I think we have an interview with LeBron James. Is that right, Jason? I thought I heard something.
Did that happen? Yeah, no, I think it did. Yeah, I mean,
the cover of the magazine
this
week.
It's the cover of the magazine, a multimedia extravaganza. This was months and months, as you know.
Yes.
You've been a very, very patient broadcast wife.
Your real wife, Jen, and I both should get an award.
You're both very relieved that this got over the finish line. But yeah, I mean, and the time that it took to do it is really part of the story. We'll get to that a little bit later on. We've got some other great conversations too. It's not just about me.
No, it's not, but it is a big part about you. But I'm looking forward to that. Jason Farley is professor of nursing and infectious disease trained nurse epidemiologist at Johns Hopkins School of Nursing and Medicine. So we're going to talk to him about what's going on with the virus. Fascinating story on the terminal about the cannabis industry. What's going on with M&A? I love this. Nike earnings, bank stress test. Doug talked about that. And we're going to wrap up with a celebrity chef.
Exactly. Restaurant Impossible, the celebrity chef and host, Robert Irvine, he is going to be with us. So really looking forward to that.
All right, let's get to the Bloomberg Business Week Bite of the Day. It's one number that tells us a lot. Today's number is Quarantine 15. The Quarantine 15, folks, it is no myth. A study in obesity research and clinical practice reveals 22% of the sample group gained between 5 and 10 pounds since lockdown. A WebMD poll found 34% of respondents gained weight due to restrictions. Investors picked up on the trend. The Solactive Obesity Index, who knew that there was one, but there is up 26% in 2020. I have to say, I think I've actually lost some weight.
Oh, boy.
Sorry.
You're just making everybody out there hate you. I'm more or less stable. It's just stress and Peloton.
Be a little stable.
It's good combo.
Not snacking at all those great snacks in our food court.
Well, there aren't many around right now. All right, let's get down to Washington now. Nancy Lyons is there for World and National Headlines. Hey, Nancy.
Hey, Jason. More than half the country is seeing surges in COVID cases, which many experts believe Americans are disregarding safety standards, and that's why the cases are going up. But regardless of the numbers, Larry Kudlow, director of the National Economic Council, is once again saying there will be no return to a shutdown.
Fatalities are still down, and there's a lot of positive declines in cases, just as there are negative declines in cases. So, you just have to walk through that. But no, we will not shut the economy down.
One of the major hotspots right now is Houston, where intensive care wards are close to capacity. Texas Governor Greg Abbott is suspending elective surgeries to improve bed capacity. Baylor's dean of the National Schools of Tropical Medicine predicts The worst is yet to come. A government watchdog says the federal government's quick action to issue stimulus payments to deal with the pandemic resulted in more than $1 billion of fraudulent payments. $1.4 billion went to people who've recently died. And the Government Accountability Office says the slow action to address the health risks from coronavirus might have worsened the outbreak. The Supreme Court has ruled the Trump administration can deport some people seeking asylum without allowing them to make their case to a federal judge. The High Court's 7-2 decision applies to people who fail their initial asylum screenings, making them eligible for quick deportation or expedited removal. The justice ruled in the case of a man who'd fled persecution as a member of Sri Lanka's Tamil minority, but failed to persuade immigration officials that he faced harm if he would return to Sri Lanka. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
Working from home, take a little more time for breakfast. Tom Keene.
How will this pandemic change your NASDAQ?
Jonathan Farrell.
When you look at that sector, some of these companies won't exist, will they?
And Lisa Abramowitz.
They've only continued to increase the delinquencies and defaults.
Crunch data topped with fresh world news. Bloomberg Surveillance. Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. And now watch us on Bloomberg Television.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the Lingo.
GOAT, G-O-A-T, acronym, stands for Greatest of All Time. As in, spaghetti sandwiches for dinner? They're my fave. Dad, you're the GOAT.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
You're living in a world built on science, political and economic.
You've got to believe the labor market gets hit.
Computer and medical.
Clarify where we are on a test.
It all makes a difference.
What do you think needs to happen in terms of governmental response?
And it's all here.
He expects the virus to peak quite a long time from now.
Get your science straight.
The hand washing campaign, is this actually a good strategy?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Hi, I'm Danica Patrick. Watching my nieces grow, play, and learn is amazing, but not every child gets to be carefree. 1 in 6 kids in the U.S. are hungry. This breaks my heart, and it's something that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and gives it to families in need. To help, visit feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting.
My name is Danya. I moved to Manchester in 2010. I came from Afghanistan. The first school day was a bit tough. I had no friends, couldn't speak English, and felt a bit left out. My high school teacher was very supportive. She matched me up with friends that spoke the same language as me. Having friends gave me a lot of confidence. I felt like I'm not being left out.
Teaching. Every lesson shapes a life. Get free one-to-one support with our teacher training advisors to get one step closer to the classroom. Subject to eligibility. Search Get Into Teaching.
I was offered one.
I was offered one. Were you?
Yeah, I was offered one too.
1 2 1 2. I was offered one.
I was offered one.
Don't take our word for it. 9 out of 10 people said they were offered a great value deal with O2. Get yours today, in-store, online, or by phone.
I was offered one too. O2 Retail Exit Survey 309 of 348 agreed with the statement. O2 offered me a great value deal. For full verification, see o2.co.uk/terms.
The Mini Electric was raring to go until ready, set, stop. We hit the power down switch. We waited. But now, it's time to start up again. We're ready with the Mini Electric and whole Mini range online. Showroom safety measures are set, and we're feeling good to go. Find your perfect Mini at mini.co.uk.
When you're buying tech online and you want to make sure you get exactly what you need, would you rather talk to a machine? Or to someone called Mac, or Jack, or Miguel, or Haley, or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience?
Hi, it's Ali. What are you searching for?
Isn't it nice to get expert advice from another human being before you buy? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
At Argos, our sale is on and so much more. Go online to shop our range of amazing deals, including tech, toys and home. And style up your home with up to half price on selected home and furniture. Visit our website to shop our full range of deals. With Argos, you're good to go. Subject to availability, conditions apply, sale ends 14th of July.
It could be a first-timer or a long-timer or a once-in-a-whiler. It could be a little or a lot. It could be the ticket under your fridge magnet. It could be someone with your first name and last and middle. It could be you. This Saturday's £15 million lotto jackpot must be won, or thousands of you will win a share of the jackpot. Play online or on the app. Lotto from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
When the world stopped, people in our local communities didn't. At the Co-op, we want to say thank you to all the local heroes. Daksha wanted to help the NHS, so she and her husband Parish cooked 50 meals for a hospital in Harrow. But they didn't stop there. They've set up the Community Response Kitchen, delivering to hospitals, schools and homeless shelters across London. Now they're delivering between 1,000 and 3,000 meals every day, and they've achieved all this with no funding, just the support of local businesses and local people. To Daksha and Paresh and all the local heroes that keep our communities going, the Co-op says thank you.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
4 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
So markets are broadly advancing today, but, these gains are kind of muted. I want to begin with Macy's. The stock is actually down about 5%. The company announcing today it's going to eliminate about 3,900 corporate and management jobs. Now, Macy's says the restructuring will save the company about $365 million this fiscal year, and then about $630 million a year going forward. Cerberus Capital Management is finally headed to the checkout counter when it comes to Albertsons. It's been 14 years now since the private equity firm acquired the supermarket chain. Albertsons is set to price today in an initial public offering. Deal could raise about $1.3 billion. So we have the Dow Industrial Average right now ahead by about 0.2%. In the broader market, a bank share is leading the S&P 500 to a gain of about 0.3%. NASDAQ comp better by about 0.3% as well. By the way, the bank stocks are up after a rollback on certain regulations in the Volcker rule. Banks will now be allowed to more easily make large investments into venture capital and similar funds, and banks will also be allowed to avoid setting aside cash for certain derivative trades. 10-year Treasury now at a yield of 67 basis points. Got strength in crude oil. That's helping to lift many of the energy stocks. WTI now 38.70 in the active contract with a gain of about 1.8%. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right. Doug Krisner, thank you so much. Really appreciate the update. So, Jason, I know you've been busy, and we're going to talk a lot more about LeBron later, but there have been a lot of virus headlines today. We've got New York moving to phase 3. That starts on July 6th. Yeah. You've had Texas's governor halt new phases of reopening in its state economy, also suspending elective surgeries in a bunch of big cities. And Florida, once again, showing a really big jump in new cases. So lots of headlines. Jason Farley is a professor of nursing and infectious disease trained nurse epidemiologist and a nurse practitioner in the Division of Infectious Diseases at the Johns Hopkins School of Nursing and Medicine. The Bloomberg School of Public Health, I just want to remind everybody, supported, of course, by Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. Jason joining us on the phone from Baltimore. Jason, it is great to have you here with us. Help us make sense of these headlines. We are increasingly moving towards reopening. Most folks, CEOs and the like, even people from the medical community like yourselves, come on and say we've got to move towards reopening. But how do you, cross that with the increases we're seeing in some of the states around the country?
Yeah, I think we have to look at the data so far. And the fact of the matter is that the places that have reopened early and fast are the ones seeing most of the spikes. There was a lot of delay in California, and so they're a little bit of an anomaly in in the areas that we're seeing because they were more methodical in their reopening. But what we're seeing is this return to normal life in many jurisdictions, and as a result, a return to the need to lock down in several of these spots. Houston, just noting specifically this really big rollback. My brother's right now in Houston for some cancer-related treatment, and he's reporting that they're now messaging in the city right now that we're about to think about canceling elective surgery, like you mentioned, and other related rollbacks. So our decisions to open up too fast have ultimate consequences.
And so, what do we do at this point? Because I know, Jason, there is real reluctance to completely shut down, but is that potentially the only choice from a medical perspective? And I think most importantly, and you know this better than I, from just a capacity perspective and a bed perspective.
Yeah, and I think what places are seeing in terms of our concern really is, can we meet the demand of hospitalizations and ultimately the demands of ICUs? It's the same concern that it was before. And while we're better prepared in terms of PPE and ventilator capacity, we are not better prepared in relation to surge capacity, right? So we still have the same number of beds we've always had. We've turned other units into, more functional ICU-like units and also more ventilator capacity in many settings. So those are all good things, and so we're better prepared. But we also still have a limited bandwidth in terms of the total bed capacity, the total health workforce capacity. And so when we see large spikes in cases, particularly large spikes in cases that result in substantial increases in hospitalization, the question at hand is, can the health system, deal with that surge? And if so, is there any associated excess mortality in cases that may be delayed, in cases that may not receive optimal levels of treatment?
Well, that's interesting, and that's where I wanted to get to, Jason, if I may, is that in terms of treatment, though, it feels like we are making some progress with treatments for those who might have a moderate case or, a severe case. And so maybe that is helping kind of stem some of the increases in the number that ultimately have to be in the hospital for a long time.
Yeah, so our biggest recent advance has been the data that came out on dexamethasone.
Right.
Now, dexamethasone is a great, very cheap, very available steroid. And what the data showed us is that basically patients who needed mechanical ventilation, about 29% better mortality than in patients who did not receive the drug. So that's at least a glimmer of hope for patients who need mechanical ventilation. And then in patients who needed oxygen, supplemental oxygen support. So they weren't quite at a point of ventilation, but they were sick enough to need hospitalization and oxygenation. And in those patients, 1 in 5 or 20% actually improved using the drug compared to those who did not receive the drug. However, there was no benefit whatsoever in patients with more mild or moderate and had not yet needed hospitalization and not yet needed oxygenation. So what we've seen is that if you are sick enough to need oxygenation, there is a benefit, and sick enough to need mechanical ventilation is even a bigger benefit. So what that does, the drug does, is basically quiets the immune system, right? It helps our bodies begin to heal but not over-respond.
All right, we're going to continue this conversation because we have lots more questions for Dr. Jason Farley, professor at Johns Hopkins University School of Nursing. So much to get to on the virus, what happens next, and just want to dig a little deeper because, as you said at the top, Carol, the headlines are scary.
And one of the headlines also included Moderna's CEO talking about the efficacy of their vaccine and giving us a time frame. They should know within 6 months. So I do feel like we're starting to get a better idea of what the calendar perhaps may look like. But we'll dig into that more with Jason Farley of the Johns Hopkins Schools of Nursing and Medicine. All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar, Jason Kelly. He's in our Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. I'm still working from home. We have lots to come, including the cover story of this week. It's all about the King, LeBron James, Jason's exclusive interview. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Wall Street has spent the day recovering after its worst sell-off in 2 weeks yesterday. Stocks are just slightly higher. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 24, the S&P 500 up 4, the Nasdaq is up 20. Disney is dropping references to the film Song of the South from its Splash Mountain rides in California and Florida. The rides will be re-themed with elements from The Princess and the Frog, Disney's first film to feature an African-American heroine. Workers for J.P. Morgan Chase in Columbus, Ohio will begin returning to their offices next month. They'll gradually come back starting July 13th, ramping up to 50% by September 7th. It's one of the bank's largest U.S. offices. Cerberus Capital Management is headed for the checkout at Albertsons. The supermarket chain is set to go public, with Cerberus and other backers selling nearly 66 million shares. The offering will be priced tonight. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
The world's financial decision makers connect on the Bloomberg terminal. The buy side and the sell side together, collaborating across markets and countries in real time, sharing ideas, negotiating trades, and forming an influential network of over 325,000 financial professionals that helps power global markets. Isn't it time you join them? Request a demo at bloomberg.com/professional.
It's a stock market driver.
Now they're starting to see...
At Honda, we believe in our ears. Listening can help solve some of life's biggest conundrums. For example, if a car breaks down and there's no one around to hear it, does it make a sound? The answer is yes. The new Jazz Hybrid will pinpoint your location automatically and send for help at the tap of a button. And with its personal assistant, you can find the answers to other conundrums like, where is a good vegan gluten-free pizza place with free parking? The new Honda Jazz. Hybrid and connected. Honda. The power of dreams. Connectivity subscription available in selected grades.
And action!
I was offered one.
Cut. That's not on the script.
I was offered one. Get you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I was offered one.
Come, boy. I was offered one. Don't take our word for it. 9 out of 10 people said they were offered a great value deal with O2. Get yours today, in-store, online, or by phone.
I was offered one too. O2 Retail Exit Survey 309 of 348 agreed with the statement. O2 offered me a great value deal. For full verification, see o2.co.uk/terms.
There's a reason flash storage is called flash storage and not electronic non-volatile computer memory storage. From quick and efficient data retrieval to instant scalability, everything about IBM flash storage is fast. It's also cloud-ready and surprisingly affordable, with a recommended monthly price of £310 for 24 terabytes of all flash. Order by the 30th of June and pay nothing for 90 days. Find out more at ibm.biz/flash offer.
This is a message from the government about the next stage of controlling coronavirus with NHS Test and Trace. To protect your friends and family, testing and tracing must become a new way of life. If you have symptoms, you need to get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we will contact you to trace people who you might have infected. From now on, if you're told you've been exposed to an infected person, you must self-isolate for 14 days. Play your part and do the right thing so we can safely return to a more normal life. Go to nhs.uk or call 119. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Okay, here we go.
With the NFL draft in the books and the schedule set, check out a TuneIn podcast for daily updates on the lead up to the 2020 season, like the Ringer NFL Show, where a rotating cast of Ringer experts talk with players,
coaches, and special guests about the NFL landscape.
A lot of the other teams that we consider...
Or ESPN's NFL Live.
If there are some delays because of the COVID-19...
Search sports on TuneIn to explore these pods and much more. To help keep you and your loved ones safe, TuneIn has the latest guidelines from the CDC. Outdoor activities, wash your hands and don't touch your face. Stay at least 6 feet from people you don't live with. Wear a mask. Avoid shared surfaces like swings or benches. For the latest stories and updates on COVID-19, search Coronavirus News on TuneIn.
Hi, this is Mike Tirico, introducing you to Sports Uncovered, the newest podcast series from the storytellers at NBC Sports that will shine a fresh light on the most unforgettable moments in sport.
The reason why I'm smiling, I might get in trouble for this.
Search Sports Uncovered to start listening today.
Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960 to the country, Sirius XM Channel 119, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Coming up, we're going to continue our conversation with Dr. Jason Farley down at Hopkins. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, me too. Still have a bunch of questions here. First up, though, let's get back to the world of business and a check on the trading day. Here is Doug Krisner.
All right, Carol, we're looking at a rally in the bank stocks today. This is after a rollback on certain regulations within the Volcker rule. You know, banks now are going to be allowed to more easily make large investments into venture capital and even some similar type funds. At the same time, banks will be allowed to avoid having to set aside cash for certain derivative trades. So the S&P Financials Index right now with a gain of a little more than 1.5% right now. So that's on the positive side. If you look at the flip side of what's happening in the broader market, utility shares are weak today along with consumer discretionary names, and that is largely the reason that we're seeing negative S&P 500. The index is down about 0.1%. Similar drop for the Dow Industrial Average right now with a loss of 0.1%, and the NASDAQ Composite weaker by about 0.1% as well. Cerberus Capital Management is finally headed for the checkout counter when it comes to Albertsons. You know, this has been 14 years since the private equity firm acquired the supermarket chain. Now, Albertsons will price today for an initial public offering, and this deal could raise more than $1.3 billion. You guys have been talking about COVID-19. Well, in terms of the virus, we're focused squarely on the situation in Texas, where the governor there, Greg Abbott, has halted the phased reopening of the state's economy. You know, he's been really criticized for his swift relaxation of those lockdowns. And it's probably really the reason that we're seeing not only a jump in overall cases, but critically, and a big increase in the level of hospitalizations as well. Right now, in terms of the bond market, 10-year Treasury yielding 67 basis points. Crude oil higher by 1.5%. WTI is at 38.60. I'm Doug Krisner. That's your Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right. Doug, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Let's get back to our conversation with Dr. Jason Farley, professor at Johns Hopkins University School of Nursing and the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. As you can probably tell by the name, it's supported by Mike Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg Philanthropies and Bloomberg LP, the parent of this radio station. Jason, got to talk vaccines here. We hear so much about development. We hear about all the various things going on, some great collaboration going on across the world. What's realistic here?
Yeah, well, we are hearing some glimmers of hope. You know, we got the Moderna vaccine that is moving into phase 3 trials, and that's great because that's the final efficacy kind of level trial that we need. Does it work? Does it not? You know, the phase 1 and phase 2 are really about safety and what we would call immunogenicity. So does a vaccine actually produce an immune response? And so we've gotten great data from that. The phase 2 study from Moderna has been completely enrolled. It enrolled in like really, really accelerated speed, less than 2 weeks, I believe, which is all great news. That means we'll get answers about how good its impact on the immune system is. But what we really must have to know for sure is this phase 3, 30,000 people study that will begin enrolling in July.
All right, so walk us through that and explain the timetable for that one, because this is to make sure it's really safe with lots of people.
Yeah, absolutely. So the FDA cleared in May that particular vaccine candidate, and there are many, so we are focused on just one at the moment.
Right.
But so with this particular vaccine candidate, they cleared it in May, gave it a dosing structure of 100 micrograms to get the dose for 2 vaccines, 28 days apart. And then they're going to follow this cohort of patients for 12 months after those 2 vaccinations. And so they'll be looking at everything from does an immune response occur after vaccine, which we expect that it will, and then how long does that last? And so ultimately, one of the things that influences the speed in which we get answers is how many cases of coronavirus we have. Because the lower the population incidence, right, the higher the number of people they have to enroll to find new cases. Mm-hmm. So that's really critical. So that's why a worldwide study. That's why as many places that we can get. So some that have high incidence, some that have low incidence, is going to be really critical.
It's interesting that you bring that up. And I was watching a network news piece last night, and they were talking about, I think it was a lot of testing that's also going in, I think, was it Africa, where they've lined up a lot of people. I mean, is this what's involved? Like, we have to do this on a global scale?
Absolutely. I mean, we need to know, because we've got to remember, does the vaccine work is the first question. Mm-hmm. And how does it work, and how much of an immune response do we get? How long does it last? And then does it work equally in all people, in all populations, right? Because there could be subtle differences genetically from a host perspective, so us as humans, that we need to just ensure that there is no difference in response across the world.
So wait. So then what does it mean? If this goes through, then we get it when? Maybe?
Yeah. So, I think that's the $6 billion question. So obviously the FDA is going to be paying very, very close attention to this study. And it's gotten already accelerated, status in terms of moving forward to production. So the question is, what's the incidence in that location? How many cases are expected in the placebo group? How many expected in the actual intervention group? And then how many do we actually see? And based on that data, the Data Safety Monitoring Board, which is the group that says, hey, we have enough data that we can stop this study and we can stop it early because we are sure of the answer, will be following to tell us the answer to that question.
So could it be the end of the year? I'm not going to let this go. Could it be the end of the year? Could it be, or is it more likely early next year?
I'm thinking a landscape that's really into 2020, and I wouldn't even use the word early.
You mean 2021?
2021, yes, 2021.
Okay. Interesting. So, Dr. Jason Farley, last question for you. Only about a minute left, and you probably don't even need that much time. What do we need to do in the meantime? Because what Carol and I keep saying on air and to each other, wear a mask.
3 words.
Yeah, absolutely. Common sense is what we need to do.
There are the 2 words.
Absolutely.
All right. Very good. Thank you so much. Really good to catch up with you. And thanks for bouncing along with us as we try and figure out this new world. You're on the front lines of this. And we always appreciate our friends down at Johns Hopkins sharing their insights with us. Dr. Jason Farley, professor at Johns Hopkins University School of Nursing, Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, of course, supported by Mike Bloomberg. Carol?
That gives me some optimism. And the thing is, Moderna is doing one, but remember, we've had guests on too that and as Jason pointed out, that there are, we know, like 200 plus, cases where people are pursuing different types of vaccines, and then there's probably equally that many just going after different types of treatments, to deal with the virus at different stages. So there's got to be something that comes out of this.
Yeah, I think so many people are just hoping for, an almost like cinematic miracle. And look, maybe it'll happen, that there will be, with all these brains focused on it, there'll be some breakthrough that helps us solve this. I mean, here's hoping for sure. Yeah. I do believe in science. So
I do too.
That's a good thing.
I'm an optimist too. And I really love to see everybody kind of working on this.
What was
Resilient
the term?
Optimist.
Resilient Optimist. That was good. Mindy Grossman.
That's another T-shirt.
Exactly. So many T-shirts. All right. Let's get down to D.C. again. Nancy Lyons is there for World of National Headlines. Hey, Nancy.
Hey, Jason. Governments and businesses are ramping up precautions as coronavirus case numbers surge. Infections are rising to dire new levels, wiping out 2 months of progress. Several states have set single-day case records this week, including Arizona, California, Mississippi, Nevada, Texas, and Oklahoma. Johns Hopkins senior scholar Amesh Adalja tells Bloomberg Bloomberg it's largely due to the public's behavior.
Many people thought when the stay-at-home orders were lifted by their governors that meant it was safe to go out, not realizing that the stay-at-home orders were in place to preserve hospital capacity, not to say that the risk from the virus was gone. This virus has established itself in the human population. It's not going to go anywhere until there is a vaccine.
While some southern states are experiencing a resurgence of the virus, New York is improving, and New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio says the city will begin the third phase of reopening July 6th. The Eiffel Tower is back open, ending its longest ever closure in peacetime, 104 days. Patrick Manco is the Eiffel Tower Director General.
It's a big day of pleasure for me and for all my team, for my team of 800 people working every day to serve our visitors.
President Trump is heading off to Wisconsin this afternoon for a tour of a shipyard. His standing in Wisconsin appears to be suffering from the extraordinary period of turmoil. His visit is part of a concerted effort to shore up support. A Marquette University Law School poll released yesterday showed Democrat Joe Biden with an 8-point lead over Trump in Wisconsin. Biden is campaigning today in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons.
Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
Economics.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Thursday evening by the scruff of the neck. Take this sunshine as an omen and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
You know that feeling when you get more than you expected? Like when your week off is forecast warm and sunny. Or when there's an extra unclaimed sausage left on the barbecue. Or joining Tesco Mobile and finding out you get the latest phones and 99% UK network coverage. Yeah, that feeling. Nice, isn't it? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK.
At Halfords, we're here to get you where you want to be. Why not book an MOT to get you safely back on the road? With over 600,000 carried out every year at 350 garages, you can always count on our experts. And get back to visiting those you've missed the most. Hi, Mum. From a safe distance, of course. From MOTs to battery replacements and tyre fittings, there's no job too big or too small. Halfords, for life's journeys.
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are
ploughing on, boxing up goods and rolling them out, shipping kettles,
instruments to kids,
art for walls,
treats to pets, shorts for sunny weekends,
to brighten up one British home at a time.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
The Mini Electric was raring to go until ready, set, stop. We hit the power down switch. We waited. But now it's time to start up again. We're ready with the Mini Electric and whole Mini range online. Showroom safety measures are set, and we're feeling good to go. Find your perfect Mini at mini.co.uk.
You always say the best thing you ever did was join up. I bet you don't get the same experiences in Civvy Street, especially the expats. And that feeling of pride. Lots of people are rejoining now. It's easy, and we'd love to have you back. Go on, feel the pride again. Search RAF Rejoiners.
It could be a first-timer or a long-timer or a once-in-a-whiler. It could be a little or a lot. It could be the ticket under your fridge magnet. It could be someone with your first name and last and middle. It could be you. This Saturday's £15 million Lotto jackpot must be won, or thousands of you will win a share of the jackpot. Play online or on the app. Lotto from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
We're all in uncharted territory looking for ways to support our communities. At Dell Technologies, we're making sure small businesses have the right tech solutions. Dell Technologies advisors are here for you, helping small businesses stay connected and productive while working remotely with Windows 10 Pro and Microsoft Teams. We're standing by you every step of the way. Call us today on 0800 169 1745. That's 0800 169 1745.
Today at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
So we have about an hour and 13 minutes or so before the closing bell. Right now, the equity market is drifting lower. We've been kind of fluctuating between gains and losses here within about the last half hour or so. We have weakness in shares in Macy's. Stock is down 5.5%. The retailer is going to cut about 3,900 corporate and management positions with a goal of saving the company about $365 million this fiscal year, and then about $630 million a year going forward. On the other hand, a rally in shares of Rite Aid. Stock is up just about 25% right now. The company's earnings were above estimates and revenue also above forecast. Even so, Rite Aid did withdraw its forecast for the fiscal year 21, citing a lot of uncertainty. But that theme is pretty familiar, isn't it? Bank stocks are rallying, given a rollback on certain regulations within the Volcker rule. Right now, the S&P 500 bank index is trading higher by just about 1.8%. Dow Industrial Average down 0.1%. Now the S&P has turned positive. The gain here is less than 0.1%, and the Nasdaq Composite remaining a little on the back foot here with a loss of about 0.1%. WTI crude oil recovering after yesterday's 6% plus drop in the New York session. Right now we're trading 38.75, and the yield on the U.S. 10-year Treasury is at 67 basis points. I'm Doug Krisner. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Doug, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Well, the cover story you might have heard in Bloomberg Business Week this week. It's all about LeBron James and Maverick Carter, the company that they're building, a big multimedia extravaganza that I pulled off with my very good friend Joel Weber, who is the most patient man on the planet. Before we get to him, let's listen to a little bit of that interview. There is something about this company that feels, not to be glib about it, but very LA in many ways. Walking around, seeing people. What do you take from sort of LA that informs what this has become?
It all stemmed from my upbringing. It all stemmed from Akron. It all stemmed from all these people that we've met along the way that grow up in similar situations. And for us, when we talk about storytelling, we want to be able to hit a lot of homes where they feel like they can be just as part of that story, or they feel like, oh, you know what, I can relate to that story because I am someone that's going through that same situation. So, being authentic to what we do, as far as if it's TV, if it's digital, if it's apparel, whatever the case may be, just trying to hit home in living rooms, and families and households, and we've been able to capture that because our stories are very authentic. So, it's because we're here in LA and we use a lot of facilities that's here. That is the correlation with that. But as far as what we do, it's very organic to our upbringing.
It's the platform, but also it's when you grow up like LeBron and I did, it's more than anything, honestly, it's the exposure. Mm-hmm. Because when you grow up in a place like we are, no matter how talented you are, no matter how good you are at something, and you believe it, if you don't even know things exist, and you're not exposed to them, then there's no way for you to ever even feel empowered, because you're like, I'm confined to this small world. And because of him, as I said, he was my platform. Then I got exposed to this big world. So now, as a company, we feel that's our duty too, is a lot of exposure through storytelling, exposure through experiences, exposure through job creation at our company. We have you come to our company, there's people from all over the country, all different walks of life.
All right, well, that is a part of my conversation, actually part of the February conversation I had in Los Angeles with LeBron James and Maverick Carter, Maverick being the second voice you heard there. Let's bring in Joel Weber, the editor of Bloomberg Businessweek. And Carol, not to turn this too much into a love fest, but I cannot say enough good things about Joel Weber on this story, because he has been my partner through all of this and just a relentless supporter. I'm so grateful to him and so happy to have him.
He's so exhausted, he had to go take a vacation in Massachusetts. He had to leave Brooklyn and take a break, Jason Kelly.
I wore him out. So, Joel, let's talk about this. What was your thought when we started talking about it?
How does LeBron James get $100 million, and then what does he do with it? And that remains I think this really interesting business decision, and talk about the most perfect moment in the world to have capital at your back and have this big idea and a strategy that they're going to execute. I just think it's going to be a kind of just a behemoth. And Jason, I think, one of the ways that you sort of were able to articulate this was it's a little bit of a mashup of sort of how, you said like one inspiration is kind of Disney, frankly, which is obviously in their backyard in LA. When you talk to them, what kind of strategy do you feel like they're going to unveil going forward regarding content?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because throughout this whole process, you and I and Jim Ailey, one of the senior editors, one of your deputies on Bloomberg Businessweek, we would get together when we used to be able to get together and say, so what is this thing? And it's a great question, and it is, Maverick Carter calls it a house of brands, and Jim Ailey actually was the one who came up with this nice thing in the story where I think we say it's part Disney, it's part Nike, it's part Patagonia in some ways, Carol, because there is this social mission underneath it that obviously has come to the fore, I think, especially right now.
Can I just say, first of all, the cover, when Jason shared it with me, Joel, it's spectacular, and it just made me stop. And I think I've been thinking so much, really deeply, as many of us have been, certainly about the virus and the impact and the inequalities that have been, laid bare. And then, of course, what happened in Minneapolis and racism, and talking about things over the last month. And I just felt like, man, we need to see more companies like LeBron and Maverick Carter are building, right? Where diversity is just intrinsic to what they're doing.
Yeah, that's right. And to be clear, we shot Maverick and LeBron together, and I did have this thought, which was like, we shot them before the pandemic, and they're very up close and comfortable.
Right. They are not socially distant.
They are not socially distant. They are not wearing a mask, but it was taken before the pandemic hit.
It's so great.
And Jason and I had a nice little tug of war of like, do you do LeBron solo, or do you do Maverick and LeBron? And I was like, you're crazy. Like, LeBron is arguably the most recognizable human on the planet. Like, how could you not do him solo? And I think Jason made a really strong point, which we ended up reinforcing with the cover line, which became the king and the CEO, which is he didn't build this thing on his own, right? And he's got a network, Maverick, and he have been together for years. They go back to Akron high school days together. And, Maverick has been with them. And, even like the decision when LeBron announced that he was going to Miami, taking his talents to South Beach, Maverick was there. And I also think that speaks to like the journey that they've been on, because I think that they would acknowledge that didn't go well, but it was a learning experience, and it helps inform how they make business decisions today and going forward, because I'm sure there will be more.
It absolutely does. Yeah. Well, our thanks to Joel Weber, my personal thanks to Joel Weber, the editor of Bloomberg Business Week. He and I have been doing this together back when he was an editor on Bloomberg Markets, then the editor of Bloomberg Markets, now, of course, the editor.
My garden has grown in the time that you guys have been working on this. I'm just saying.
We've been working on this one for a long time, but really happy it got over the finish line.
It's great.
Anyway, Joel Weber joining us from Massachusetts, Carol.
Yeah, and we're going to hear more of this interview, certainly over the next few hours. So be sure. In fact, we're going to play the entire interview a little bit later on, but you're going to have to hold on for that. For those of you listening in New York, D.C., and San Francisco, watching on YouTube Bloomberg Business Week, we're going to continue. If you're listening on Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, Bay State Business is coming up next. And coming up next, Jason, we've got to talk a little bit about economics in terms of Fed policy. We did get some economic news. We talked about that with Mike McKee, but we've got to get a little bit more deeply into that. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week on this, I'm going to call it LeBron Thursday. Is that okay?
It's fine with me.
This pandemic is about more than markets.
My name is Donya. I moved to Manchester in 2010. I came from Afghanistan. The first school day was a bit tough. I had no friends, couldn't speak English, and felt a bit left out. My high school teacher was very supportive. She matched me up with friends that spoke the same language as me. Having friends gave me a lot of confidence. I felt like I'm not being left out.
Teaching. Every lesson shapes a life. Get free one-to-one support with our teacher training advisors to get one step closer to the classroom. Subject to eligibility. Search Get Into Teaching.
When you're buying tech online and you want to make sure you get exactly what you need, would you rather talk to a computer or to someone called Colin or Jack or Miguel or Haley or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience?
Hey, I'm Ali. How can I help?
Isn't it nice to get expert advice from another human being before you buy? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
The big Volkswagen event is now on. If you're after an approved used Volkswagen, for a limited time, you can buy one with 2 years warranty, 2 years MOT cover, 2 years roadside assistance, and 2 services all included at 8.9% APR representative. Hello, sir. Do any take your fancy?
I need to sit down.
The big Volkswagen event. With every type of car on offer, you may have trouble choosing. With Solutions Personal Contract Plan until 12th of July. At participating retailers on used Volkswagens aged between 90 days and 60 months only. Indemnities may be required. Warranty valid for vehicles up to 100,000 miles at activation. MOT cover is up to 2 years and is underwritten by UK General Insurance Limited. Volkswagen Finance. Contact your local retailer.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
How do hockey fans know what day it is? Just turn on the Locked on NHL podcast, where our rotating cast of hockey experts guide you through the week with a different theme show for every day. From big news Monday to recap Friday.
But we've got a couple of news items that are noteworthy in the NHL in the last week, one of which is below the NHL, and we'll bring that up first. So the AHL announced officially, this has been speculated for weeks and weeks, but the AHL...
Search Locked on NHL on TuneIn to listen. To help keep you and your loved ones safe, Tune in as the latest guidelines from the CDC. Indoor gatherings. Wash your hands and don't touch your face. Stay at least 6 feet from people you don't live with. Wear a mask. Don't share food, toys, or other items, and avoid shared surfaces. Open windows for better ventilation. Try to avoid gathering indoors as much as possible. For the latest stories and updates on COVID-19, search Coronavirus News on TuneIn.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters in New York, I'm Doug Krisner. Let's get you caught up on market action as we have about an hour until the closing bell for today's session. Right now, we are seeing the Dow holding onto a very slim gain of about 0.1%. We have been fluctuating throughout most of the day between gains and losses. On the positive side, bank stocks are rallying. This is after a rollback on certain regulations of the Volcker rule. Banks will now be allowed to more easily make large investments into venture capital and similar funds. And banks are also going to be allowed to avoid setting aside cash for certain derivative trades. The S&P Financials Index right now with a gain of about 1.7%. Also a recovery in the price of crude oil after that big drop yesterday. WTI right now is higher by about 2%, 38.75. We were down more than 6% in the last session. A lot of concern persisting in the oil space about a build in the level of U.S. inventories. But for the moment, energy stocks are higher, with the S&P Energy Group up about 0.2%. And the strength in financials and energy helping to lead the S&P higher by about 0.1%. Similar gain right now for the NASDAQ Composite. Cerberus Capital Management is finally headed to the checkout counter when it comes to Albertsons. You know, it's been 14 years since the private equity firm acquired the supermarket chain, and now Albertsons is set to price an initial public offering today. This deal could raise about $1.3 billion. We're also keeping a very close eye on the COVID-19 pandemic. Texas Governor Greg Abbott today halting the phased reopening of his state's economy. He's been criticized for his swift relaxation of lockdowns, many of which are basically pointing to not only a jump in cases, but an increase in the number of hospitalizations as well. And New Jersey has reviewed cases of COVID-19, the state classifying 1,854 more deaths as probably linked to the novel coronavirus. We've got dollar strength right now with the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index higher by just about 0.2%. 10-year Treasury yielding 67 basis points. I'm Doug Krisner, and that is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Messer and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, let's do a little bit of Business Week economics. Carol, I've got another friend. I found another friend.
What's your friend?
Kathleen Hayes.
Oh, sorry. Well, you mean in the
You're
studio?
Like, you have a friend? What happened? What's going on?
You have many friends, but you mean in the studio?
I found another friend right here in the studio with me. Michael McKee was here earlier. Kathleen Hayes here now, Global Economics and Policy Editor. Andrew Husby, he's in your home state of New Jersey, joins us on the phone to talk a little economics. Kathleen, I want to start with you. Obviously, from an economic perspective, we kicked off the show talking to Michael McKee about this. As I mentioned, the jobless claims. What's the economic picture out there that's developing?
Well, the jobless claims show that we're in a process that is still winding its way through the economy. And maybe we're in the beginning of the second phase of the process where we know that some people, in fact, in May, some millions of people got hired. But at the same time, I think the other part of this, the process as it continues is, I'm a business who realizes, I don't need as many people because my business is not going to come back that quickly. I think that's one of the explanations our Bloomberg News team put forward. I think it's one possibility. We did hear and read so much about these gigantic backlogs of applications at many state unemployment offices. I wonder if we aren't seeing just a little catch up there.
Right.
Stephen Stanley Carroll, in a note last week, said he has completely dropped jobless claims as a reliable indicator.
Wow.
Oh, totally. And he talked talked about how there's these different programs people are applying for, the pandemic help from the federal government, et cetera, et cetera. And so sometimes they find a claim that hasn't been filed properly. They spit it back, it comes back, and then maybe someone gets double counted. So I just think that I'm with Stephen Stanley. Let's don't put too much emphasis on this.
Hey, Andrew Husby, you're joining us, Bloomberg Economics U.S. economist on the phone from New Jersey. Do you agree that weekly jobless claims, are you guys still spending a lot of time focusing on those numbers?
We certainly are, and certainly I think it's more qualitative than finding the tight quantitative link between claims and something like payrolls, because I think the point is generally right. It proved a relatively poor guide on the extent of job it claims expected job losses in May. We got an increase in payrolls in that month. So certainly from that perspective, yes, but I think directionally, I think it will tell us sort of how reopening is proceeding in terms of net new hiring, and certainly on that front, the momentum seems to have slowed a bit, but as Kathleen points out, there are certainly some caveats you have to take into account here, but they do, at least at the moment, show that there are about 30 million still claiming benefits on these two main programs that are in place right now. So it's certainly a sizable number that needs to get worked through, and many, according to our team's analysis, simply either can't return quickly, or more importantly, even in sort of an upside case, the real allocation and the shock to the job market are going to prevent a lot of these jobs from coming back.
So Kathleen, what's the most interesting thing you've heard from a Fed president or from the Fed over the last week?
Over the last week, that's a good question. This is Thursday, so it's by Asia Friday, so it's been almost the entire week. It seems to me they're kind of all looking at this the same. I mean, you had Rob Kaplan from the Dallas Fed speaking again, and Raphael Bostic from the Atlanta Fed, and they are putting, not worried about inflation or deflation, Raphael Bostic's case, putting a lot of emphasis on the virus. And of course, Rob Kaplan, president of Dallas Fed, has got Houston in his Fed district. So that's really showing you that, of course, they were a state that's kind of going through what New York went through, what New Jersey went through. So we'll see how bad it gets.
One thing I wanted to put out, there's a great story by Rich Miller on the Bloomberg, and it just talked about how the U.S. recovery looks to be ebbing in states with virus outbreaks, which completely makes sense, right? Yeah. The economic momentum slows down, but it's a reminder, Andrew, come on back in, that the recovery, despite Steve Schwartzman saying we're going to get a V because everything is shut down and now it's not, kind of thinking, and I get that on one hand, but we're seeing it's not a straight line, Andrew.
Yeah, certainly not. I think to go to that point about Fed comments, I think one thing that they've also said is, certainly you shouldn't extrapolate the early months to a V, and I think that's the way policy should be approaching the crisis at the moment, because as we've noted, as we've sort of stressed, there may be an initial bounce in Q3 if reopenings go well, but at the same time, there's a substantial fraction of say services and other activity like that depends on a lot of contact, that depends on the virus being relatively under control, that will not return as quickly. So you may get an initial V, but not a full one, certainly. It's more of a protracted and uneven process in our view.
I want to throw in a couple of stories on the Bloomberg today, which I'm sure you guys have already been talking about while I was walking through Central Park to work. This story about rush to start business, stoking optimism for the economy. It's a story from Bloomberg Business Week, and so that's why you guys, of course, you're covering it, that there's all these employer identification number applications. So a lot of people are saying, I've got something I can capitalize on in all of this. I think that's one very hopeful story. And the story from, why is his name escaping me? Mr. W Hotels, etc. Barrett, yes. That he says how much rents are going to fall. 40% for commercial rents, 25% for residential rents in New York City. Tough thing for the city. Now you're going to try to raise taxes to get more money out of a smaller tax base, perhaps. But you know what that means? If you're a business, commercial real estate rents are ridiculously high. Ask anybody who's had to leave their store because it got too high
and
before the pandemic.
Right? We've seen so many stores leave, just even in our neighborhood.
Exactly. So I think there's potential. You put together, I see an opportunity. There's financing from the government because of the pandemic. Now rents come down. I'm an optimist, obviously, but I think there's room also in here to see a nice steady upturn in that kind of opportunity, that kind of business, right now, my neighborhood on the Upper West Side is kind of still sadly empty, even with the beginning of the reopenings. I mean, the bars are probably doing okay out there on the sidewalk. Long way to go, but I don't know. I look for the good signs.
That Stern Lake story is a great one.
It's a great one. Yeah. We've got to talk about that later.
We do.
All right. We're going to do that. In the meantime, our thanks to Kathleen Hayes, Global Economics and Policy Editor for Bloomberg, here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio with me, and Andrew Husby, U.S. economist for Bloomberg Economics, joining us on the phone from New Jersey, Carol.
Another friend of yours.
Another friend. I wonder who will drop by next. No one. No one. The answer, no one.
Like Mr. Neighbor.
I just have to, make my friends on Zoom. We're going to talk about my good friend on Zoom a little bit later on.
All right, let's go to world and national news headlines. Here is Nancy Lyons in our D.C. studio. Hey, Nancy.
Hey, Carol. Former Vice President Joe Biden is back on the campaign trail. He's in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where he's been speaking to families who've benefited from Obamacare.
We should be thinking about health care not as a privilege, but as a basic right.
Biden has picked up another endorsement from a Republican. Former Hewlett-Packard CEO Carly Fiorina says she will vote for Biden in November. She tells The Atlantic Biden is a person of humility, empathy, and character counts. President Trump will be campaigning today in Wisconsin. The chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Jay Clayton, is assuring Congress being nominated as the top prosecutor of the Southern District of New York would not affect his current role. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman with more.
Representative Maxine Waters, who chairs the Financial Services Committee, was concerned that Clayton would act at the SEC in ways that demonstrate his loyalty to President Trump.
There's no need for me to pay any attention to the nomination at this time. I intend to continue to serve as chairman of the SEC, pursue all matters with independence, and consult with ethics on any issues that would give the appearance of not having independence.
Clayton said capital markets were stabilized and the flow of credit maintained by government action, and second quarter earnings reports would show how well companies are adjusting to the coronavirus impact. In Washington, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
NASA is naming its headquarters in Washington after the space agency's first African-American female engineer. Mary Jackson started her NASA career as part of a segregated unit of female mathematicians at Langley Research Center in Hampton, Virginia. Her story was recounted in a book and 2016 film Hidden Figures. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons.
Even when you're just beginning to leave your house, you see a bigger world.
The company is a clear winner from the virus lockdowns.
He's saying a new cycle has started.
And it may never be the same.
Does all of this boosting work mean that you're going to expand?
Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
What could there be that could change this?
Weekdays at 1 a.m. Eastern.
What was the most striking thing about your research?
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
To protect her home and family in a disaster, Karen was willing to wade through water, mud, and insurance paperwork.
Yeah, I can do this.
You go, Karen! By simply understanding and updating what her insurance covers and doesn't cover now, she'll be better prepared no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies. Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
At Bloomberg, we know a lot.
Listen, that's a dream. Everyone has them, jingling away in the back of our minds. And most of the time, that's where dreams stay. So easy to ignore. Anything can drown them out, and everything does. But at Honda, we listen to our dreams. we get right up close. And on really good days, they become reality. From 2022, Honda's mainstream cars will only be hybrid or electric. Honda, the power of dreams.
You know that feeling when you get more than you expected? Like when your week off is forecast warm and sunny. Or when there's an extra unclaimed sausage left on the barbecue. Or joining Tesco Mobile and finding out you get the latest phones and 99% UK network coverage. Yeah, that feeling. Nice, isn't it? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK.
When you're buying tech online and you want to make sure you get exactly what you need, would you rather talk to an algorithm or to someone called Al or Jack or Miguel or Haley or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience?
Hey, it's Ali. Can I give you a hand?
Isn't it nice to get expert advice from another human being before you buy? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
At Argos, our sale is on and so much more. Go online to shop our range of amazing deals, including tech, toys and home. And style up your home with up to half price on selected home and furniture. Visit our website to shop our full range of deals. With Argos, you're good to go. Subject to availability, conditions apply, sale ends 14th of July.
It could be a first-timer or a long-timer or a once-in-a-whiler. It could be a little or a lot. It could be the ticket under your fridge magnet. It could be someone with your first name and last and middle. It could be you. This Saturday's £15 million Lotto jackpot must be won, or thousands of you will win a share of the jackpot. Play online or on the app. Lotto from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
This is a message from the government about the next stage of controlling coronavirus with NHS Test and Trace. To protect your friends and family, testing and tracing must become a new way of life. If you have symptoms, you need to get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we will contact you to trace people who you might have infected. From now on, if you're told you've been exposed to an infected person, you must self-isolate for 14 days. Play your part and do the right thing so we can safely return to a more normal life. Go to nhs.uk or call 119. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
With the shift to remote working, video conferencing has become the new normal to keep your business running. But is it reliable and secure? Cisco WebEx is committed to the highest security standards and already trusted by both small businesses and many of the world's largest organizations. Call, message and meet securely with Cisco WebEx. Sign up at cisco.uk/work-from-home. When secure remote work is critical, WebEx is essential.
Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
We're at 17 past the hour. Let's get you caught up on market action. Equities have been kind of fluctuating today between gains and losses. Right now, the S&P is at its session high. Let's get to the Bloomberg Macro Squawk Desk and a closer view from Bill Maloney. Hey, Bill.
And good afternoon, Doug. Like you said, stocks higher today in a choppy session. Did have a weak open. Dow's currently higher by 162 points. S&P's gained 18. NASDAQ climbs by 52. The U.S. 10-year yield at 0.67%. Gold trading little changed. And WTI crude futures are up 2.2%. Leaders to the upside in the Dow, the financials, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, and Dow Inc., while Raytheon, Boeing, and Intel led to the downside. On the IPO front, CNBC reported that underwriters have lowered the price of Albertsons IPO to 16. That's below the previous range of 18 to 20. And in other news, Beyond Meat said they are still positive about the relationship with McDonald's. That is after the shares fell as much as 10.2%. Also, Dow Jones reported the White House weighs a broad intervention to secure 5G's future. Wrapping things up, the financials gained after getting an easier Volcker rule and a $40 billion reprieve on swaps, and Nike reports after the bell. Live from the First Breaking News Desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Doug?
All right, Bill, thank you. And we've got word that Apple is closing an additional 14 U.S. retail stores tomorrow because of the recent spike in cases of COVID-19. I'm Doug Krisner, and that is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Doug, thank you so much. Well, I have to say that this story definitely caught my attention, and maybe because last night I was kind of actually looking at the cannabis industry and the CBD consumer industry.
I did not know where you were going there. It's like, last night, it's been a long week already. It was Wednesday.
My husband and I sat down. No. But what's interesting is there's someone that we talk to a lot about the cannabis industry, especially CBD consumer, who is no longer CEO of that company anymore. So we've seen some fallout. The industry definitely going through some growing pains. This story on the Bloomberg this morning about Pot M&A's mystery antitrust reviews linked to a crackdown by the U.S. Attorney General William Barr. I wanted to do this story. David McLaughlin is with us. He's Department of Justice reporter at Bloomberg News. He joins us on the phone in Washington, D.C. So, David, what's going on?
Right. So there was a hearing yesterday about on Capitol Hill about politicization of the Justice Department under Attorney General William Barr, and most of the focus on the hearing was about Roger Stone, but there was this interesting piece of it that was focused on marijuana mergers, cannabis mergers, and according to this whistleblower who testified, and he's a lawyer inside in the Justice Department's antitrust division, he said that Attorney General William Barr ordered basically special scrutiny of these mergers because he had a sort of personal dislike for the industry, and so that was unusual because
you can't do that.
Pretty fragmented. There's not. There are many companies. It's not like a consolidated industry like mobile phones carriers or other industries that might get kind of a lot of attention. So this was kind of strange at the time, and now we know why. According this whistleblower is correct.
Well, I was going to ask you another question about the weed business, David, but I have to say what you said leads me in another direction, which I think you know the story so well, which is this is a different sort of Department of Justice that we're seeing, fair to say, or a different or a different Attorney General, maybe is
or
more
both.
The point. Yeah, or both.
Yeah, of course. I mean, this. A lot of controversy about the Justice Department right now. Sort of obviously the high-profile cases are things like Roger Stone and Michael Flynn and William Barr's involvement in both of those cases. That's gotten a lot of the headlines. But in terms of business cases and antitrust, there's been controversy there too. So if you go back to the beginning of the administration, there was controversy about the Justice Department tried to block AT&T's takeover of Time Warner, and that got caught up over Trump's criticism of CNN. Was that political? There was controversy about an investigation into the automakers, four automakers that reached an agreement with California about emissions that Trump didn't like, and then the Justice Department opened an investigation, so that seemed very political.
Right.
You have this marijuana case. There are many of them, and so this criticism keeps coming up.
But what I think about for the marijuana industry, right? It's a nascent industry. It's definitely gone through, no pun intended, growing pains. We saw an explosion, whether it was Canadian companies and U.S. companies. We talked about, Jason and I would have a lot of guests, CEOs who are running different companies, and most I think were pointing to you were going to have to see consolidation, right? And really create stronger players. It just made sense, to be able to deal with, especially because the regulatory environment was taking so long to kind of get its act together. And I do wonder what role potentially, David, that this kind of slowdown potentially by the U.S. Attorney General, what impact it's had on the industry. Unfairly so, perhaps.
Right. So, these reviews, because they were ordered by AG Barr, these in-depth investigations of mergers can be really burdensome. So, like, we interviewed the head of one of these companies. He talked about how responding to this, the Justice Department's request for information costs millions of dollars. It takes many months to satisfy the government's questions and their demands for information. So that kind of uncertainty, I mean, that is bad for any merger. That kind of waiting period. But in this case, a lot of companies were being affected by it. And so, in fact, one of the deals, even though it eventually got approval, the companies blamed this delay for having to ultimately terminate the merger.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, this is having real world consequences for these companies in an industry that, and we know this, Carolyn, you mentioned this from the Bloomberg 50 and others, has been booming in many ways, certainly in Canada and across the United States as well. Some really nice reporting. Thank you so much. David McLaughlin, Department of Justice reporter for Bloomberg News on Pot M&A's mystery antitrust review. Well, they are going back to AG Barr.
Yeah. And don't you feel like...
Little tune to take us out.
But don't you feel like for so long we were constantly doing interviews with CEOs, and I feel like the momentum has slowed down.
Oh.
Like we even had the conversations.
100%. Yeah. Well, I mean, it was a very acquisitive industry. I mean, that's how it was getting built. Bobby D.
Just let it play. This is Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. The job market is recovering from its pandemic lows, but the gains have slowed to a crawl. The government says first-time jobless benefit claims fell by just 60,000 last week to less than 1.5 million. A larger drop was expected. The lackluster data and worries about a resurgence of COVID-19 have stocks in a narrow range. The Dow Industrials are up 132, the S&P up 14, the Nasdaq up 40. Consulting giant Accenture is cutting costs amid the pandemic. It plans to reduce hiring, stall some promotions, and delay start dates for some new employees. It is also retraining employees in areas such as technology and cloud services. As bars across the U.S. try to recover from the coronavirus lockdowns, there's a new threat. The Trump administration has proposed raising tariffs on alcoholic beverages like German ales and British gin. That could force bars to raise prices. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
You're fierce. You take care of business and don't hold back. Taking care of your health shouldn't be any different. You know when something's off. Don't ignore symptoms like fatigue, joint pain, and rashes. Listen to your body. It could be lupus. We're here to help you take control. Learn how at BeFierceTakeControl.org. Brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of America and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
COVID-19. Can the world reopen for business?
Give us a sense of how you're ramping up and taking care of folks on the ground.
What's the long-term impact?
Why will we not see a V-shaped recovery?
When will there be a cure or a vaccine?
How can you model that at a time when it's unclear whether we're going to see a resurgence in viruses?
The answers will emerge.
Can you give us a sense of timing?
And you'll find them here. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. In-depth analysis.
What if the world listened more? Maybe it could become a better place. Because when we really listen, we start to notice things that don't sound quite right. They might not seem obvious at first, but listen closely and they stand out like a sore plum. And the more we listen, the more we learn. Our ears help us find belter solutions. And things can change from this to something a little more like this. The new Honda Jazz is a hybrid. Honda, the power of dreams.
This is a message from the government about the next stage of controlling coronavirus with NHS Test and Trace. To protect your friends and family, testing and tracing must become a new way of life. If you have symptoms, you need to get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we will contact you to trace people who you might have infected. From now on, if you're told you've been exposed to an infected person, you must self-isolate for 14 days. Play your part and do the right thing so we can safely return to a more normal life. Go to nhs.uk or call 119. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Where do sports, culture, and basketball nostalgia collide? On their podcast, Knuckleheads, NBA veterans Quentin Richardson and Darius Miles sit down with athletes, musicians, and entertainers to get brutally honest, totally unguarded conversations about everything from current events to untold stories from the golden era of sports.
O'Neal. You know that, right? I tried to tip dunk off the free throw line one time.
Search Knuckleheads on TuneIn to listen.
Did you know that with TuneIn's local radio feature, you can stream live FM and AM stations broadcasting in your area? Discover local news, talk, and music stations. Navigate to the local radio section under Browse to listen locally on TuneIn.
Wanna bet football can make you feel nostalgic?
Playing days are over, so...
On the podcast, NFL Alumni Lounge, Charlie Booth sits down with retired NFL legends to talk about their careers, life after football, and everything in between.
Mr. Darren Waller, good to have you.
Yes, sir, it's good to be here.
Dana White, welcome to the Alumni Lounge.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Big member of our NFL alumni family, the CEO of the XFL, Mr. Oliver Luck.
Charlie, good to see you. Thanks for having me.
We're here with the president, Mr. Eric Price. Good to see you.
Search NFL Alumni Lounge on TuneIn to listen.
To help keep you and your loved ones safe, TuneIn has the latest guidelines from the CDC. Home alone or with housemates, stay home as much as possible. Try to allow only people you live with into your home. Wash your hands. If you're sick, stay home and isolate from housemates. For the latest stories and updates on COVID-19, search Coronavirus News on TuneIn. How do hockey fans know what day it is? Just turn on the Locked on NHL podcast, where a rotating cast of hockey experts guide you through the week with a different theme show for every day. From big news Monday to recap Friday.
But we've got a couple of news items that are noteworthy in the NHL in the last week, one of which is below the NHL, and we'll bring that up first. So the AHL announced officially, this has been speculated for weeks and weeks, but the AHL...
Search Locked on NHL on TuneIn to listen.
Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Yes, indeed, everybody. It is Bloomberg Business Week on this Thursday. Carol Master along with Jason Kelly. Coming up in just a moment, we're going to get to Dave Wilson. His chart of the day, as promised, has to do with Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway. First up, though, let's get back to the world of business. Your top business stories and a check on that trading day. Here is Doug Krisner.
Hey, Carol. About 28 minutes now until the closing bell. The equity market is very near the best levels of the day. You can credit the financials. That's largely where the leadership is coming from today. The banks are rallying after a rollback on certain regulations within the Volcker rule. The S&P Financials Index right now with a gain of about 2.6%, and the S&P higher right now by about 0.9%. Also strength in energy stocks. They're tracking the price of crude oil higher. WTI up 2.6% after that more than 6% drop yesterday. We're trading right now at about $39 a barrel. Dow Industrial Average ahead 1%. And in the NASDAQ market, the composite index is better by about 0.8%. And now the Bloomberg Small Business Report. Here's John Tucker.
Barber shops and salons welcoming customers back. The door open again at Concept Salon on 2nd Avenue here in New York City. But restrictions mean only a few customers at a time. Helio De Sousa is one of the owner stylists there. Helio, since the reopening on Monday, how's business been going?
Well, we are limited in how many clients we can have at the time. That already creates a situation that is very difficult for us. And all the precautions of safety and, maintaining 6 feet distance between clients, it's a lot to think and deal with.
How did the first day of business go?
The first day was a busy day, and we're getting calls, and hopefully it moves on like this.
How has the business adapted? What have you had to do to ensure and comply with the safety regulations?
Well, there is a lot. I have to have an empty chair between each occupied chair, and also we have to be cleansing everything we use: tools, combs, scissors, brushes, sinks, towels. We all have face masks, and it's a lot to be doing that we never, we did before, but not at this extent.
Helio, thanks a lot. Helio D'Souza, one of the owners of Concept Salon here in New York City. I'm John Tucker. That's your Bloomberg Small Business Report.
All right. And we have dollar strength right now with the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index pushing up 0.1% and a 10-year Treasury yielding 68 basis points. I'm Doug Krisner. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
Yes, indeed. Doug Krisner, thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio. Is so perfect, and I feel like now we're getting 2-for-1 Dave Wilson. Dave Wilson, our stocks editor at Bloomberg News. It is time for his chart of the day, but we also had a story about now what they're called, the chicks?
That's it. Dixie, gone from their name after all these years.
That's a big deal.
It is, just like what happened when Lady Antebellum became Lady A.
Exactly.
Just a couple weeks back. It's all about how things are changing in light of the issues that have been brought up since the death of George Floyd.
Yeah, exactly. And I have to say, I feel like the entertainment industry, the content creation industry, they've really come out very quickly and been like, okay, this just isn't cool anymore, and made the changes pretty quickly. Things are changing. And I have to say, Jason and I earlier, Dave, talked a little bit about Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway. Katja Galinsky, she's got a story on the terminal, and she's like, what are you buying if you buy into, Berkshire Hathaway right now? Because their performance as of late hasn't been like it used to be.
Absolutely, and that's the point, because Jim Bianco over at Bianco Research is not ready to make nice when it comes to Berkshire's performance. I mean, he had a post out yesterday comparing Berkshire with the S&P 500 on a total return basis. So you include dividends. Now, Berkshire doesn't pay any, so your entire return is based on the performance of the company's shares. But, things have really been fading in the last several weeks when you look at the ratio between Berkshire's Class A shares and the S&P 500 Total Return Index, which the chart does. And it's gotten so bad. Earlier this week, the ratio fell to its lowest level since November 2001. And it's dropped 23% from this year's high back in March. And beyond that, if you want to extend the analysis a bit, as Bianco did, you can say that the ratio is actually back where it was in 1995.
Wow.
And that's what led him to conclude in a Twitter post where he presented a similar chart. Berkshire has turned into a mediocrity. In other words, a place where things are mediocre. And so that's really the point. And it's sort of consistent with how other people are looking at Berkshire these days. I mean, you mentioned that story, and, it's come up in other places. So Bianco's post got my attention.
Yeah.
And now it's today's chart. If you want to see it, folks, send me an email. I'll get it to you along with the explanation that goes with it and everything I do going forward. The email address is dwilson@bloomberg.net. That's dwilson@bloomberg.net.
Well, and what's interesting about this one, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, Dave, is just, Berkshire's a massive company. I mean, a almost $435 billion market cap company. It's a conglomerate, right? Between ice cream and things that you use in a home and insurance. I mean, it's just kind of all over the place. And for a while, they were able to really move the needle, whether it was through acquisitions, in terms of building out into certain businesses, doing some really amazing deals coming off of the financial crisis, and those provided really wonderful returns. And we've talked increasingly how even though they've got a lot of cash on their balance sheet to put to work, it's hard to find something that's going to move the needle at this point.
Right, and you have to look at the business itself and how it compares with what else is out there. Last week, Michael Batnick over Ritholtz Wealth Management, he's the research director, put out a chart showing that if you add up the market values of Square, Spotify, Tesla, Zoom Video, and Shopify, together, they're higher than Berkshire.
Yeah. Although
that's just how things have changed.
The only thing I will say, and yes, we're definitely a very different world when, from when Berkshire first started. But I mean, some of those tech names, we'll see what it means, kind of after the virus, because I feel like a lot of them have gotten a boost because of it. All right, Dave, thank you so much. Dave Wilson, check out his chart of the day. Check him out on Twitter. Be sure to do that at the One Dave. And you can also see a little bit more of that chart. Coming up next, we're going to count you down to the closing bell. We've just got about 20 minutes left in today's session. It's been kind of an interesting day. Initially, some negative tone to the market, but we're pretty much just off our highs of this session. So we're seeing certainly some gains across the board. We'll count you down to the closing bell on this Thursday. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar along with Jason Kelly. In the meantime, let's get back to world and national news headlines. Lots going on in the world for that. It's over to Nancy Lyon. She's in our D.C. studio. Hi, Nance.
Hey, Carol. The Centers for Disease Control is now saying that more than 20 million people in the U.S. may have contracted the coronavirus since the start of the outbreak. That's 10 times higher than the 2.3 million confirmed cases. In a call with reporters, CDC Director Robert Redfield says the estimate is based on the antibodies that were found in blood samples from all across the country. Former Vice President Joe Biden is using his record on health care, specifically the Affordable Care Act, to make a pitch to voters in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. He suggested today that planned changes to the ACA proposed by President Trump would weaken the U.S. response to the current pandemic.
In the middle of the most consequential health crisis in American history since 1918, we're cutting access to insurance.
The Trump administration is expected to file a legal brief today urging the Supreme Court to strike down Obamacare. President Trump is taking his campaign to Wisconsin today, and as Bloomberg Nathan Hager reports, he faces a different dynamic than 4 years ago when he narrowly defeated Hillary Clinton in the state.
A New York Times Siena College poll shows the president trailing Joe Biden in Wisconsin by 11 points. He's also down by double digits in Michigan and Pennsylvania, and trailing in North Carolina, Arizona, and Florida.
The sense among Democrats is they really need to win back those states if they have a shot at beating Trump. So this poll is certainly a good sign for them.
That's Bloomberg's Kathleen Hunter. The poll suggests if the election were held today, Biden would win the Electoral College 335 to 203. Nathan Hager, Bloomberg Radio.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
The best of Bloomberg Business Week.
What if the world listened more? Maybe it could become a better place. Because when we really listen, we start to notice things that don't sound quite right. They might not seem obvious at first, but listen closely and they stand out like a sore plum. And the more we listen, the more we learn. Our ears help us find better solutions. And things can change from this to something a little more like this. The new Honda Jazz is a hybrid. Honda, the power of dreams.
It could be a first-timer or a long-timer or a once-in-a-whiler. It could be a little or a lot. It could be the ticket under your fridge magnet. It could be someone with your first name and last and middle. It could be you. This Saturday's £15 million Lotto jackpot must be won, or thousands of you will win a share of the jackpot. Play online or on the app. Lotto from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events.
Yeah, but it's unique times. I think there's unique circumstances, and we're trying to
standout stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
With millions of podcasts dropping new episodes all the time, how do you keep up with all your favorites? TuneIn makes it easy. Simply head to the home screen and find your new episode section to see the latest additions.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Want to get all your college sports news in one place? Turn on the Yahoo Sports College podcast to hear experts Dan Wetzel, Pat Forty, and Pete Thamel break down the latest NCAA stories from the football field to the basketball court and beyond.
I think Reggie should do a video of him running to Heritage Hall and front flipping in. Remember that famous front flipping the end zone that he did? Wasn't he the one who made that popular?
I think he was.
I think he was, yeah.
Search Yahoo College Sports Podcast on TuneIn to listen.
Ready to talk brass tacks on what's happening in Major League Baseball? Turn to the Effectively Wild podcast from Fangraphs for daily statistics, analysis, and commentary.
One team will say, yeah, we're going to keep paying minor leaguers their stipend, and another team will say, we're going to extend the stipend through this month, and then another team will say, nope, we're cutting them off. So are extending it at least through August, which would basically be the end of the minor league regular season.
Search Effectively Wild on TuneIn to listen.
How do hockey fans know what day it is? Just turn on the Locked on NHL podcast, where our rotating cast of hockey experts guide you through the week with a different theme show for every day. From big news Monday to recap Friday.
But we've got a couple of news items that are noteworthy in the NHL in the last week, one of which is below the NHL, and we'll bring that up first. So the AHL announced officially, this has been speculated for weeks and weeks, but the AHL...
Search Locked on NHL on TuneIn to listen. To help keep you and your loved ones safe, TuneIn has the latest guidelines from the CDC. Indoor gatherings, wash your hands and don't touch your face. Stay at least 6 feet from people you don't live with. Wear a mask. Don't share food, toys, or other items, and avoid shared surfaces. Open windows for better ventilation. Try to avoid gathering indoors as much as possible. For the latest stories and updates on COVID-19, search Coronavirus News on TuneIn.
News 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
So we're less than 13 minutes away from the closing bell, and we have a push higher now for U.S. equities that actually began around 3 p.m. Wall Street time. Right now, Dow Industrial averages near session highs with a gain of about 0.9%. S&P 500 better by about 0.8%. We have Apple pushing up about 0.7 right now. The company is closing closing an additional 14 U.S. retail stores. This will happen tomorrow because of the recent increase in cases of COVID-19. Macy's cutting about 3,900 corporate and management jobs in a restructuring that's expected to save the company about $365 million this fiscal year, and then going forward, about $630 million a year. Macy's shares down by more than 4%. Rite Aid is rallying by nearly 26%. Today's earnings above estimates. Revenue also at the high end of forecast. And we have the stock trading up about 26%. Bank shares rallying as well, given a rollback on certain regulations in the Volcker rule. The S&P 500 bank index right now leading the broader market higher with a gain of more than 2.5%. S&P 500 is up by 0.8% right now. NASDAQ comp higher by about the same amount. In the bond market, 10-year Treasury yielding 67 basis points. We've got a rally in crude oil here. WTI better by more than 2.6%, trading at $39 a barrel. I'm Doug Krisner. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
I'm driving in my car. I turn on the radio.
Yeah, but you let me drive.
Oh, no. Who's gonna drive you home?
Honey, please, I'll do the driving.
Drive on.
Excuse me, I want to drive.
Just drive, baby.
It's the question that drives us.
This is the Drive to the Close.
That funky music will drive us till the dawn.
On Bloomberg Radio.
It is time for the Drive to the Close. Back with us is Alan Lance. He is research director at lanceglobal.com, president of Allen B. Lance and Associates. Alan joining us once again on the phone from Toledo, Ohio. Alan, great to have you here again with Jason and myself. I was looking at my notes that you sent over, and you are, Lance Global that is, at its highest cash level since late summer 2007. Not because you're a bear, though, because of profit taking.
Yes, this has been pretty predictable, COVID, as the way the market has gone. And basically, Carol, what we've seen is that initially the market hit new highs into February, even though people were aware of COVID. Most investors underestimated the impact. And then as the sell-off began, what we did is we focused on companies that we thought that would come out of the pandemic even stronger than they went into. So we were buying the Amazons into weakness and UPS. And Amazon had only a few days of weakness, really, and it has gone straight up since. UPS has been up and down, so we just stuck to our price parameters. And then as the sell-off intensified, we bought the Fortress balance sheet companies, and into the depths of the sell-off, we started buying the cyclicals. Our latest purchases last month were the travel industry, which we avoided the whole way through, and those had really rebounded in the past few weeks, and we took profits this week in them, figuring that it's going to be a long way before even international routes are going to be anywhere back to normal. I mean, we're talking a year or two, and a lot of those stocks had really surged and rebounded quite impressively, actually more so than we expected. We thought that profit taking was warranted.
And so, Alan, how much do you worry about a second wave when it comes to coronavirus here, affecting especially some of those particular names you're talking about?
Yeah, definitely, Jason, and that's why we got out of the travel as far as sector completely. Anything related to travel, we'd recommend avoiding or at least being dramatically underweight. And right now, what we were buying like today is like a Pfizer under 32, where it has a 3.75% yield. Merck at 75. Boring companies like IBM at 115 with a 5.75% yield, or we added Coke for the first time in years, trading at 43.44 with again a very impressive yield. Boring companies, but I think I'd rather have that that into a second wave than owning a cruise, company or an airline at this stage. And if you own the S&P 500, if you're a passive investor, I mean, you own a lot of airlines, a lot of cruise companies, and if you weren't smart enough to take profits in February when the market was hitting all-time highs, I think this is a gift here where some of these travel-related companies have not really factored in a second wave, and as we see that more and more here, I think there's more risk than reward, and that's what we really look at with each investment.
Yeah, I mean, is it safe to say, Alan, I don't know how you look at this, and obviously you're looking at, individual stocks and whether it makes sense or not to own them at this point, but you've got to look at an industry like airline or hospitality. I mean, we're already seeing it, certainly the fringes of retail, increasingly companies that were just on the edge, either filing for bankruptcy. But what about when it comes to the airline industry? Do you anticipate that there might be a big name that just doesn't make it through?
Well, that's been the amazing thing, this flood of liquidity, Carol, between the central banks, the Fed, and even, as far as in the markets in general, there hasn't been really a problem of raising monies in this environment. And that is really, I think, what fueled these travel and hospitality related stocks to really surge beyond what we expected. And like I said, I consider that as a gift because they are getting money, interest rates are low, it's cheap, and they might avoid bankruptcy, but boy, it's going to be a difficult environment, and I'd much rather be in the names that I just talked about and buying those into the weakness than chasing airlines or the cruise companies at this stage.
Got to pay back the debt. I'm just going to say at some point.
Absolutely. In some form or fashion, yeah. So, Alan, before we let you go, you mentioned a couple names coming into the top of this, but tech stocks, just defying gravity and leading the way in so many cases. How do you play that at this point in the cycle and at this point in the pandemic, I guess?
Well, it's really difficult. We've transferred gotten a lot of new accounts, and they might have the NASDAQ QQQs, and they might have the S&P. And the way we play that is we keep the NASDAQ and then sell the S&P because we don't want those travel-related companies. So we like tech, we like healthcare, and healthcare is underperformed, and even the financials will probably be the next area if you see a sell-off that will buy just, again, the highest quality companies that have a good, strong income stream. But I think that's the best way to play it is just to be smart and use these extreme, as far as moves up and down to your advantage. So when you have 8 straight days up on the NASDAQ, take some profits, and then when you get these sell-offs, try to prepare your buy list and accumulate wisely. And I think that's going to be the difference maker into the balance of this year and into 2021. The disciplined investor is going to do a lot better than the passive investor or the investor that's chasing momentum.
Don't be too greedy either.
Yeah, exactly. Strong stomach this market takes. All right, Alan Lance. I sounded like Yoda just then. Director of Research for LanceGlobal.com, President of Allen B. Lance and Associates. Joining us on the phone from Toledo, Ohio.
Better Yoda than Darth.
That's
I'm just
true.
Gonna say.
Strong stomach this market takes. I don't even know what I'm doing at this point. I'm so tired.
You need sleep. You need sleep.
I do. Exactly.
We're going to count everybody down to the closing bell. Even though we're kind of up near our highs of the session, I was just looking at the weekly numbers. Dow, S&P are down a little bit, about 0.7% for the week overall. Nasdaq's a little bit higher. We still have another day to go, but that's been the tone this week, Jason.
I don't know what's going on with the music today, but it is inspired.
I know. It's like my playlist. Like I just want this playlist, and I'm going to go sit out back. Can I just do that?
A little Ohio here. Neil Young. Great stuff.
Yeah.
All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. More ahead, including the close. It's Bloomberg.
When you leave out the rumors,
listen. That's a dream. Everyone has them, jingling away in the back of our minds. And most of the time, that's where dreams stay. So easy to ignore. Anything can drown them out, and everything does. But at Honda, we listen to our dreams. We get right up close. And on really good days, they become reality. From 2022, Honda's mainstream cars will only be hybrid or electric. Honda, The power of dreams.
My name is Donya. I moved to Manchester in 2010. I came from Afghanistan. The first school day was a bit tough. I had no friends, couldn't speak English, and felt a bit left out. My high school teacher was very supportive. She matched me up with friends that spoke the same language as me. Having friends gave me a lot of confidence. I felt like I'm not being left out.
Teaching. Every lesson shapes a life. Get free one-to-one support with our teacher training advisors to get one step closer to the classroom. Subject to eligibility. Search Get Into Teaching.
When the world stopped, people in our local communities didn't. At the Co-op, we want to say thank you to all the local heroes. Daksha wanted to help the NHS, so she and her husband Paresh cooked 50 meals for a hospital in Harrow. But they didn't stop there. They've set up the Community Response Kitchen, delivering to hospitals, schools and homeless shelters across London. Now they're delivering between 1,000 and 3,000 meals every day. And they've achieved all this with no funding, just the support of local businesses and local people. To Daksha and Paresh and all the local heroes that keep our communities going, the Co-op says thank you.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Today at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Comes the close.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
There you have it. That is the sound of the closing bell for this Thursday, June 25th. And interestingly, the equity market is going to finish very near the best levels of the day. Kind of a curious trade today. There was a push higher that began at about 3 p.m. Wall Street time. One of the things that was unnerving the market a little earlier in the day, the virus and Texas Governor Greg Abbott halting a phased reopening of his state's economy, given a surge in cases and hospitalizations. A short while ago, we learned that the number of cases in the states up 1.7%. That is the biggest gain since May 30th. Dow Industrial Average is going to pick up about 1.2% on the day. In the broader market, S&P 500 better by more than 1%. Similar gain for the NASDAQ Composite. We had a rally in the bank stocks, this following a rollback on certain regulations within the Volcker rule. Energy shares track the price of crude oil higher. We had a recovery in WTI today, better by about 2.5%. We settled the regular session 38.72. That, of course, after that 6% drop in yesterday's session. Cerberus Capital Management is finally headed to the checkout counter when it comes to Albertsons. It's been 14 years since the private equity firm acquired the supermarket chain, and in a little while we're hoping to get pricing on Albertsons' IPO. Could raise about $1.3 billion. Apple is closing an additional 14 U.S. retail stores. This will happen tomorrow because of a recent surge in those COVID-19 cases. Apple shares finishing higher by more than 0.7%. And Macy's shares today moving lower after the company announced it's going to cut 3,900 corporate and management jobs as part of a restructuring that is expected to save the company $365 million this fiscal year. In the bond market, 10-year Treasury last quoted in New York at a yield of 68 basis points. Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index pushing up 0.1%. I'm Doug Krisner. That's your Bloomberg Business Flash.
Wild thing, think you move me.
I got a few moves I know you'll like. Oh, come on, shake him, not stir.
Just move on toward your destination.
I can make things move without touching them.
Shaking all over.
Bloomberg Business Week, movers and shakers. with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
Yes, indeed. Time to take a look at some of the stocks on the move on. I think Dick Krisner put it perfectly. Like, this is a weird day. It is quirky, man.
Funky trade.
Funky town a little bit on this Thursday. So let's go through it. Big picture, S&P 500. Doug, giving you those closing numbers, and we did finish pretty much at our highs of the session when it comes to the major equity averages. So what does it mean? 386 names in the S&P 500 posting gains today. 118 lower, 1 unchanged. I look at the major industry groups in the S&P 500, Jason. There are 11. 10 of them gaining ground. Top of the pack, financials up 2.6%, energy up 1.7%, information technology. Those are those big tech names. They were up about 1.25%. Bottom of the pack, only group that lost some ground, utilities, 1.3% to the downside. So that's your, I know, right? You're shaking your head. It's just
SMH. Shaking my head.
Oh, shaking my head.
Oh,
you're so cool.
Carol.
Oh my God, you're so cool.
Oh yeah, all these little. Wow.
I got to bring you down just a little bit. Keep your normal balance.
Pop that bubble. So here's one of the interesting movers.
Yeah.
One of your best performers, Accenture. Did you see why?
No.
Basically, we got to cut a bunch of costs. And
that's worrisome.
That is worrisome. Investors saying, okay, cool, you should definitely do that. And it's at, I don't know if it's at an all-time high, but certainly reaching up there. The stock was up. Let me just get a final tally here.
It's your second biggest gainer, I think, in the S&P 500.
Almost 8%, up 7.7% today, closing at 217.32. I mean, I will say
52-week high. It may have been an all-time high, but at least it's a 52-week high.
And I will say the relatively new CEO, Julie Sweet, getting some very good reviews. All-time high. Dave Wilson just weighs in for Accenture.
We
love Dave Wilson.
You.
He's the best.
Kohl's, also a name that we were watching today, and that stock down about 3.5%, 1991. Let me just see what's doing for the year. Ouch. It's down 61% this year. I do wonder, I was talking to a banker in the retail industry, not necessarily storefronts, but certainly understands the industry really well, and there are deals to be had, but, we're seeing more and more bankruptcies, no doubt about it. And
I also do it. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I'm just, I was looking to see if there's anything today in particular. I mean, the CEO said earlier this week the story's changing faster than ever expected. I don't know what to make of that.
Yeah, what do you mean, bro?
like running for the door?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, I think if you look at a discount retailer like that, this is my read without knowing much of anything about what may be specifically going on at KSS. But if you've got virus cases spiking all over the country, this is a discount retailer that has locations all across the country. I think you've got to be worried about lockdowns or at least slowing down of reopening if you're a retailer of any sort.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting. I think he said that they were about 75% of capacity. I'm not sure if that's correct. Sales are at 75% of year-ago levels. He said that earlier this week. I agree. Jason, I think the retail, we've talked about it, overstored, and I think there's still news to be known. Why are you laughing? What do you want to do? You want to do Beyond Meat?
I got to do Peloton. Oh, okay. I am amazed by this. I was talking to somebody about
meat or cycle or meat or fitness.
Fake meat or real fitness. I mean, this is a real company at this point. Peloton, it's up another 4.5% today. It's now a $58 stock. It has doubled from its IPO price.
$16.4 billion market cap company. It's up 104% so far this year. Was there news today?
I don't think so. I didn't see anything specific. But again, you sort of go back to this idea of, okay, if folks are going to continue staying at home, working at home. Obviously, this is a relatively affluent customer base. They dispute that. They're like, no, Peloton for everyone. It's a $2,000 bike. Come on.
John Foley, I give him credit. I think he heard the message. I think folks said, listen, you've got to work on, you've got to be able to provide, more access maybe for people who can't afford the expensive fitness equipment. I will say that Raymond James did come out. They reinstated their outperform and put a price target of 65 on the stock. It closed at 58 and change today. So there was some optimism. Want to do the VIX?
Let's do a little bit of volatility down, about 6.7% today, closing at 31.59. It's Bloomberg.
All right, Dave, you're up.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Dave.
Wilson, where are you? Wilson!
Just what do you think you're doing, Dave?
We're going for the price on Wilson. Open up the door, it's Dave. Who? Dave.
Hey, Mr. Wilson. Here with his stock of the day, Dave Wilson, our stocks editor. And the ticker is ALBO. What do you got for us, Dave?
That's right. Albireo Pharma. It's a drug developer that's pursuing treatments for liver diseases and gastrointestinal disorders. The company was spun off from UK-based AstraZeneca in 2008 and was closely held until 2016 when it merged with publicly traded Biodel. The combined company took the Albireo name and that ticker, ALBO. Albireo shares have been up and down since the deal was completed. They peaked at a record in January 2018. Then they tumbled as much as 72% to set a post-merger low in March. Yet analysts stuck by Albireo all along. Data compiled by Bloomberg shows the stock has received nothing but buy ratings or equivalents since December 2016. That was a month after the merger was carried out. Albireo gained further support late yesterday from Robert W. Baird, which began coverage with an outperform rating. Analyst Brian Scorney set a 12-month price estimate of $52, in line with his peers. He estimated that the company's proposed medicine for childhood liver disease may reach $1 billion in annual sales at its peak. And Albireo's shares then rose as high as $31.50, highest price since last July. They closed at $29.92 for a gain of about 12.5%.
That's what investors want to hear, $1 billion plus drug, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's what moves the needle.
Blockbuster.
Blockbuster.
That's the designation.
There you go, Blockbuster. That's exactly right. Dave Wilson, thank you so much. We will catch up with you tomorrow. Appreciate, as always, your insights, your charts, and your stocks. Let's get to Ed Baxter. He's got World National Headlines in San Francisco. Hey, Ed.
Hey, Jason, how you doing? U.S. virus cases have risen 1.7% day to day, the biggest gain since May 30th. Meanwhile, Texas is halting its phased reopening process. Governor Greg Abbott says businesses already operating can continue, but no more. Included in this move is suspension of elective surgeries as well. New York, so far, so good.
Phase 3 can start as early as Monday, July 6th, and right now we are on track for Phase 3.
Mayor Bill de Blasio saying what really has helped is testing, and testing has hit a record number in California. So Governor Gavin Newsom says so have the increased number of cases over the past couple of days, although down about 2,000 from yesterday, which is very good news.
You'll see today that number dropped to 5,349. Still higher than we would like it to be. Still a point of concern.
And of course, a very important statistic, he says 5.6% positivity rate over the past 7 days, which is up. The House on the cusp of passing its police reform bill today. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
Exactly 1 month ago, George Floyd spoke his final words, "I can't breathe," and changed the course of history. Since that horrific day, Americans from every walk of life and corner of the country have been marching, protesting, and demanding that this moment of national agony become one of national action.
But Representative Peter King says not so fast.
It's time to stand with the men and women in blue who put their lives on the line for us, all the rest of us, every day of the year. I strongly urge a no vote.
Yeah, vote expected today, so we'll have to see what happens on the other side. Of course, it was blocked in the Senate yesterday. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter. This is Bloomberg Radio.
With perspective comes clarity.
Each week, the story seems to change.
The best experts bring you the most clarity.
Give us a sense of what's going on in the IPO market these days.
Vonnie Quinn.
Will there be an interest from LPs in newer managers here?
Paul Sweeney.
How are companies marketing their deals here in the time of COVID and social distancing?
Bloomberg Markets, weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Melissa from Michigan. I work an extra part-time job serving lunch at my child's school, but I still can't afford to put food on our table.
Daniel from California. Choosing whether to pay the rent or pay to fix the car to get to work doesn't leave us with much at all. Now we can't even pay for meals.
Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
COVID-19. On days when it seems there are nothing but questions.
What about the pandemic emergency purchase program in Europe?
What's the medical side of this?
We try to ask good ones.
How long until we have an answer on what drugs can help us fight this pandemic?
How do you think this has the potential to rattle markets?
Does that mean we should shut down?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com.
It's a rather controversial question being asked.
Bloomberg, the world is listening.
My mother was always very active and independent, and she was familiar with her neighborhood. But one day, she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. She wasn't even really sure where she was at.
It's important for you to talk to someone about it. I felt so much better after my son told me, Mom, we'll figure it out.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
If knowledge is power, the Bloomberg...
Listen. That's a dream. Everyone has them, jingling away in the back of our minds. And most of the time, that's where dreams stay. So easy to ignore. Anything can drown them out, and everything does. But at Honda, we listen to our dreams. We get right up close. And on really good days, they become reality. From 2022, Honda's mainstream cars will only be hybrid or electric. Honda, the power of dreams.
You always say the best thing you ever did was join up. I bet you don't get the same experiences in Civvy Street. Remember those amazing deployments we had? And that feeling of pride. We'd love to have you back. Go on. Feel the pride again. Search RAF Rejoiners.
It could be a first-timer or a long-timer or a once-in-a-whiler. It could be a little or a lot. It could be the ticket under your fridge magnet. It could be someone with your first name and last and middle. It could be you. This Saturday's £15 million lotto jackpot must be won, or thousands of you will win a share of the jackpot. Play online or on the app. Lotto from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Where do hockey and pop culture coexist?
So let me get this straight. You would be able to name more people nostalgically than currently? This doesn't
Come on.
You're crazy. I know.
On their podcast, Puck Soup, NHL analyst Greg Wyshynski, Sean McAdoo, and Ryan Lambert chase the conversational biscuit up and down the ice, skating between serious discussion on what's happening in pro hockey to irreverent opinions on movies, fast food, and life in general. Search Puck Soup on TuneIn to listen.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Buckle up, race fans.
NASCAR is back in the driver's seat.
And you can cut straight to the action here.
With the Performance Racing Network on TuneIn, you can hear PRN's live coverage of some of this year's top events.
As NASCAR's top drivers, Kevin Harvick,
Clint Boyer, and more get back on the track.
Search Performance Racing Network to listen and see upcoming races.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events.
He does! Fabry wins it!
To standout stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
Did you know that with TuneIn's local radio feature, you can stream live FM and AM stations broadcasting in your area? Discover local news, talk, and music stations. Navigate to the local radio section under Browse to listen locally on TuneIn.
First, we're told that masks don't work. Then, we're told to wear them all the time. One week, we hear that the mortality rate is 2%. The next, well, who knows? In the time of COVID-19, there is so much uncertainty, and so much scientists are learning in real time, along with the rest of the world. So it's hard to know what you can be sure of and what's still a big question mark. Enter Podcast 19 from 538, where we'll explore the evidence behind the science in our fight against coronavirus. I'm science journalist Anna Rothschild. Each week, I'll investigate coronavirus mysteries, keep track of the latest developments on vaccines and treatments. Oh, and I'll try to edit out all the times I shush my family since I'm recording this thing from the chaos of my home.
Search Podcast 19 to listen today.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
It is indeed. We're just getting breaking news right now on the Bloomberg terminal in terms of Nike. The revenue here is much worse than the market had been expecting. Looks like revenue is going to come in at about $6.31 billion. Street was looking for $7.38, and I'm seeing those shares right now down more than, let's call it 2.8% in late New York trading. Equity market finished higher. It was interesting because we closed near the best level of the day. Through the session, there was this debate on one hand, we have the prospect for additional stimulus, but then the spike in COVID-19 cases, particularly in Texas, a bit overwhelming. Dow Industrial Average picking up about 1.2% on the day. S&P 500 better by 1.1%. Similar gain for the NASDAQ Composite. And in the Treasury market, 10-year last quoted at a yield of 68 basis points. I'm Doug Krisner. That's your Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Doug, thank you so much. We're going to have more on Nike in just a moment. Take a look at that quarter a little bit more closely. In the meantime, someone who's pretty familiar with Nike, Jason?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just thinking about Nike because LeBron James, he has a lifetime deal that many people think could pay him $1 billion over the course of his career. And what's so interesting is that's one of the cornerstone deals that was negotiated by Maverick Carter, his business partner, longtime business partner, who he is now even more deeply in business with Spring Hill.
You know, you come to the point where the playoffs are almost around the corner, and then, you know, it's stopped because of a world pandemic and COVID-19. So, you know, we just all had to be at bay and just kind of wait around and see what was going on and see what was happening, but understanding that the health of, you know, of every individual is so much more important at that point in time than worrying about, you know, chasing a ring or chasing a championship because there were lives at risk and no one had an answer to it. And then bring us up to speed to the George Floyd killing, and just seeing that video and seeing, you know, how many people were hurt, not only in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, but all over the world, and especially in the Black community, because we've seen this over and over and over, you know, about police brutality and the things that goes on in the inner city when being, you know, racially profiled as an African American Black man, or as a Black woman, and things that's going on. So, you know, it's been a lot that's going on in 2020, and you know, we're still trying to make the most of it and continue to be powerful and continue to be heard, and using this opportunity for the better of change at the end of the day.
Tell me what you've been doing and the opportunities that you see, and maybe some of the conversations you've been having, both in the shutdown and maybe more recently, when it comes to, you know, activating around this huge existential moment we seem to be feeling.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Thank you for having us again. I think for us as a company, you know, this is a big moment for us. You know, we worked very hard over the last 4.5 to 5 years, really building and shaping our company, and now we bring it to this moment. We're able to bring our three companies together and create the Spring Hill company. But the truth is, we weren't anticipating this moment, but what this moment has brought to the forefront is exactly what our mission stands for. Our mission at our company is about empowering greatness in every individual. When you think about that word empowering and you think about what Black people need is empowerment. And we've always tried to empower all creators, and that starts with all of the people who work at our company. We really strive to empower them. And the truth is, this now everyone is talking about diversity and having black executives at their company because of George Floyd's killing has led black people to the streets to not only talk about social reform, but political reform and economic reform. And the truth is, at our company, we've just always been that. It's a company started and founded by two African-American men from the inner city that, social, political, and economic oppression is just what we lived with it. We just did it.
And LeBron, it seems to be a moment where we're all viewing activism in a much broader sense. And I wonder, as a longtime activist, as someone who calls back in the interview that you and I had, the three of us had in February, you talked about Muhammad Ali, an amazing activist in his own right. Now, activism is something that we see everywhere. Is this a moment, a special moment, and an important moment for activism in your mind?
I think it's a special moment in the sense that you can be heard. Activism and activists have always been around, but people had a closed ear and a closed mind, and didn't want to recognize and didn't want to hear and didn't want to be knowledgeable about what they were speaking, where they were coming from, the passion that they were speaking with. Now it's being heard. People can be heard. Black Americans, African Americans, can be heard. Both men and women can be heard of what they're passionate about and the calling for help and the calling for we're just tired. So, I don't want to say activism is something that's, now everyone's doing it. No, it's always been around. But, in the case of George Floyd, in the case of so many other innocent lives being taken away, they've put up a stand, and now we're being heard, and everyone is being heard. Not only from what Muhammad Ali was saying, and so many that came before him and so many after him, but even the local people, the people in the community, because those are the real ones, the people that's in the communities, that's living and walking those streets and being racially profiled and being judged every day that they walk in their cities. They're the ones that need to be heard, and they're being heard right now, and it's great to see.
And that is a portion of my conversation with LeBron James and Maverick Carter, talking a lot about activism, this moment that we find ourselves in. We're going to have the full interview at 5 p.m. We also are going to talk a little Nike earnings ahead of that. Obviously, a brand very important to Maverick Carter and LeBron James as well.
Yeah, the stock's down about 3%, 4% in the after hours. I thought what he had to say, Jason, about activism has always been around. I mean, yeah, go back to the 60s. I think of Gloria Steinem when it comes to the women's movement. I mean, there have been activists around for hundreds of years, and it's just the environment today. It feels like they are being heard differently, and maybe in some cases for the first time, which is terrible, but at least they're finally being heard.
And I do think this generation, whether we're talking about the generation coming up behind us or, a generation of players, and part of what this story is ultimately about is this is the guy who invented player empowerment in many cases, or certainly brought it much more into the fore. You can't find an athlete these days who's not saying what he or she thinks, and that's an important change.
Yeah, and they have they're in a position, and they are on important platforms to be heard, and I hope we get to hear even more from more of them. All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Business, so you're going to check out those Nike earnings shortly.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. A late rally saved stocks from a day in the doldrums. The market posted its best gains in a week. The Dow Jones Industrial Average jumped 300. The S&P 500 gained 33. The Nasdaq Composite climbed 108. Financial stocks rallied as federal regulators finalized a rule that eased restrictions on banks' ability to invest in areas such as hedge funds. The change to the so-called Volcker rule could free up billions of dollars in capital in the banking industry. Apple is closing another 14 stores because of recent increases in COVID-19 cases. The latest closings will affect stores across Florida. They bring the number of Apple stores shut in the U.S. after reopening to 32. Amazon has bought the naming rights to Seattle's Key Arena, home to the WNBA Seattle Storm and the city's NHL expansion team. Its new name will be Climate Pledge Arena, a nod to Amazon's push to get companies to net zero carbon emissions. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
Listen, as a hiring manager, I've got to tell you, the best job candidate isn't always the typical candidate. Sometimes they're a grad of life.
Meet the grads of life.
Young adults of unique determination and experience, an ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
Sometimes the best candidates aren't the ones you're used to.
Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers. With COVID-19, so much is unknown.
Listen, that's a dream. Everyone has them, jingling away in the back of our minds. And most of the time, that's where dreams stay. So easy to ignore. Anything can drown them out, and everything does. But at Honda, we listen to our dreams. We get right up close. And on really good days, they become reality. From 2022, Honda's mainstream cars will only be hybrid or electric. Honda, the power of dreams.
This is a message from the government about the next stage of controlling coronavirus with NHS Test and Trace. To protect your friends and family, testing and tracing must become a new way of life. If you have symptoms, you need to get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we will contact you to trace people who you might have infected. From now on, if you're told you've been exposed to an infected person, you must self-isolate for 14 days. Play your part and do the right thing so we can safely return to a more normal life. Go to nhs.uk or call 119. Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
Want to get all your college sports news in one place? Turn on the Yahoo Sports College podcast to hear experts Dan Wetzel, Pat Forty, and Pete Thamel break down the latest NCAA stories from the football field to the basketball court and beyond.
I think Reggie should do a video of him running to Heritage Hall and front flipping in. Remember that famous front flipping the end zone that he did? Wasn't he the one who made that popular?
I think he was.
I think he was, yeah.
Search Yahoo College Sports Podcast on TuneIn to listen.
Are you ready for the realest first-hand take of what's happening in the NBA? On their podcast, All the Smoke, former NBA players Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson bring their fiery intensity to the mic, dishing on the latest news and drama from on and off the court without boundaries.
Half man, half amazing. My friend, our brother, Vince Carter, man, welcome to the show.
Yo, what's up, man?
What's up, my brother?
Man,
Search All the Smoke on TuneIn to listen.
How do you keep track of all your favorite stations and podcasts? Easy. You add them to your favorites list. Just find the audio you want to bookmark and tap the heart icon. Then, whenever you want to browse your favorites, you'll find everything under the Favorites tab.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Where do hockey and pop culture coexist?
So let me get this straight. You would be able to name more people nostalgically than currently? This doesn't
Come on.
It's crazy. I know.
Other podcast Puck Soup NHL analyst Greg Wyshynski, Sean McAdoo, and Ryan Lambert chase the conversational biscuit up and down the ice, skating between serious discussion on what's happening in pro hockey to irreverent opinions on movies, fast food, and life in general. Search Puck Soup on TuneIn to listen.
Live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Got our top story, at least one of them for tomorrow, and that's going to be the bank sector because the Fed capping bank dividends, banning share buybacks through September. This is coming on the heels as they release those latest stress tests. So, yeah, there you have it.
Yeah, it's a big deal for sure, and something we want to talk about with our experts, to say the least.
Yeah, we're going to get to Yaman Anoran in just a moment. Let's get back to your top business stories, including that headline that just crossed the Bloomberg. Hey, Doug Krisner.
Hey, Carol, it's very interesting because the bank stocks rallied today, and that came after a rollback on certain regulations in the Volcker rule. But you're absolutely right. Now the Fed has stepped in and essentially capped dividends at the levels that we saw in Q2 and no longer will allow banks to buy back their shares in Q3. Kind of an interesting session for the equity market. Through the day, there was this debate on one hand, the prospect for additional economic stimulus, and then look at the spike that we have seen in coronavirus cases, particularly in Texas, where Governor Greg Abbott halted the phased reopening of his state's economy. Now, the outbreak in Houston alone is kind of accelerating at an exponential rate, and it's essentially overwhelmed ICU capacity. However, a number of CEOs from Houston area hospitals were saying today they have plenty of hospital capacity. We were talking about Nike after the bell. Numbers for top line on the latest quarter, much below what the market was predicting, $6.31 billion. Now, if you look at that year over year, that's a drop of 38%. The street was looking for $7.38 billion. Nike shares down right now by more than 3% in a late U.S. session. Dow Industrial Average on the day up 1.2%. The S&P 500 and NASDAQ comp each rising about 1.1%. 10-year Treasury last quoted at a yield of 68 basis points, and we had a recovery in crude oil today. That helped many of the energy names. We're back above $39 a barrel on WTI. Right now in electronic trading, $39.15. I'm Doug Krisner. That's your Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Doug, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Well, those stress tests, remember how stressful the stress test used to be? I mean, not to be glib about it, but God. It was like red headlines, everybody at their desk trying to figure it out. Yeah. This guy was doing it back then, and he's still doing it, and that's why we trust him for all the context. Yaman Anoran, senior finance writer for Bloomberg News. I mean, I remember being glued to everything he wrote back in the financial crisis, too. Lehman Brothers, he wrote a great book about all of that. So he joins us on the phone from New Jersey. All right, so stress tests. What do we know, Yaman? What do we need to know? What's the most important thing that investors are going to be talking about?
So the biggest question was whether dividends would be cut. There was political pressure for the Fed to stop dividends altogether, dividend payments. Buybacks had sort of suspended voluntarily. Banks said we're not going to issue buybacks. We're going to buy shares back for a while. But dividends were up, the big question. Some analysts said several firms would probably face it. Politically, there was pressure to completely suspend dividends as well. The Fed didn't go that far. They said, just for the next quarter, the third quarter, you cannot do buybacks, which nobody was expecting anyway, so that's not that surprising. And you cannot increase your dividends, which again nobody was expecting. And then they said, and if you want to continue paying dividends the way you were paying the last previous quarter, you have to earn enough money to do so, which is basically based on the last 4 quarters of earnings. So that could kind of curtail dividends for some maybe small banks, but the biggest banks that I look at, even there, they might be making enough money. Of course, we don't know what they made in the second quarter. They'll be announcing that in like 2 weeks, mid-July. Then we'll know what they made in the second quarter. Banks are making money still, but it's down a lot from last year because they're taking huge provisions to cope with the coronavirus impact on the economy.
And what's interesting initially on the headlines about dividends and buybacks, I did see some of the names, the big banks, Yaman, trade a little bit lower. JPM was down about 1%. Citi was down about 0.7%. Bank of America was down, at least when I looked at it, about 2.5% to the downside. Goldman Sachs was down about 0.8%, and Wells Fargo